All right. Good evening. Happy Friday to everybody. Been a while since we did one of these. We've had lots going on. Story for another day, but we're back and we are joined today by Sheryl Alemany. She is best person I know for kind of covering what's going on with all this stuff in Russia right now and the whole Ukrainian crisis. So, Sheryl, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, I'm kind of familiar and we put it in the bio, but tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and kind of why you're so well informed on all this.
Sure. So, as you know, I did serve 8 years in the military. And during my time, I just really reflected on what was going on in the world and what it meant to be at war. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. And having been in the military, this light bulb kind of just went off. And I was like, I want to get involved with political affairs and global relations and diplomacy. So that's when I decided to go back to school for my master's degree, which ended up being in international relations and global studies with a focus in diplomacy. It's a mouthful. And prior to that, my bachelor's degree was actually in national security. So I had already had a little bit of academic knowledge kind of on world affairs. National security focused more with domestic security, but it did branch out into international security, where my master's degree is a lot more focused on the diplomacy and the political aspect of how our relations are with other countries, how their relations are with each other, and really just how all the world countries kind of interact with each other. After that, I decided to volunteer with the United Nations Association of New York, which has really almost more than I would say school has really opened my eyes to a lot more going on in the world. I have attended the Global Summit. I have sat in on Zoom calls of things going on in the world and political affairs. I have done a lot with the New York City chapter. In fact, I got engaged at the Humanitarian Awards. And now with everything going on in Russia and Ukraine and all of this, obviously the UN is a big key player in all of it. So with being a volunteer with the United Nations Association of New York, I've been trying to stay on top of it. And ironically, with everything going on, I already kind of had a little bit of background knowledge because part of my master's degree, my thesis was on Syria, which Russia was a big key player in, and kind of still is. And I also did some research with the conflict, the tensions between Russia and Ukraine, and did a paper on it. So I already had a little bit of knowledge before all of this recently happened.
Sure. Yeah, and I remember talking to you a few years ago about that. You kind of explained that to me with Syria too, because it was kind of the same boat. I was lost. I think it's a really cool reason to get into that because like we were talking a little bit before the show, but like in the time after I got out of basic and thought I was going to go back, that was kind of a big thought. I'm like, man, like all these people were doing all this, and like I really don't even understand the complexities of what's going on over there. I mean, I knew the general reason, but yeah, I think understanding why people are going to war in the first place is pretty important, and I don't think most people do, which is kind of why we wanted to have you on with this, because we're not drugged too deep into this yet, but it's whether it's memes or people talking seriously, some of the stuff that could involve us, and I don't think really many people even know what exactly is going on.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a good place to start. So what exactly is this conflict over? Like what is Russia's, what do they have to gain from this invasion here?
Yeah, so I will start off by saying that no one really knows what is in Putin's head. Over the years, right when we think, okay, it looks like he's finally on the right track, maybe he's a good person, he's doing the right thing, he completely blindsides us and does something crazy, and then he always denies it. So it's really hard to figure out really what his end goal is. With Ukraine specifically, it's such a detailed history that figuring out what Putin wants can go in any direction. As far as what's in it for Russia, so without overcomplicating it and trying to confuse people, Russia we know is more of a communist country. Putin's a dictator. There's no question about that. He does not like his he does not like the Western countries. So, the United States, all the European Union, to him, it's a threat. And Putin is all about power. He wants to have power. He's about his image. So when Ukraine and the rest of the countries broke away from the Soviet Union, Ukraine became independent, and they were still kind of being led, and that was in 1991. They were still kind of being led by, I call it Putin's puppets, but pro-Russia leaders. Now, recently, you have Zelensky, who is very Western-minded and wants to join NATO, and Ukraine joining NATO is a threat. So to answer the question of kind of why Putin is doing this, for him, it's really, according to him, it's really just a security thing. He feels that Ukraine is going to join NATO, and, that threatens his power, that threatens his security, because then Ukraine becomes more of a Western country, and is joined by NATO. One of the things recently I saw was that Putin claims that and when I say we, I mean like NATO, the US was shooting off missiles in Ukraine too close to Russia. And that's where he was like, that's it, enough. And if that was true, one good point that I thought of was, what if Russia was right on the border in Mexico shooting off missiles just to test them,
Or Cuba is the example I've heard from, back in the Cold War days.
Yeah. So that's what he claims was the reasoning for it. My personal opinion is it all comes back down to that power again. He doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO simply because, at one point they had control over Ukraine. I mean, he took Crimea. So he wants that power. He took Crimea out of spite. And that was when in 2014, the president, basically just because of protests in Ukraine, the president of Ukraine fled. Ukraine was not happy because they were on the track to join NATO. The president comes in and they were like, yeah, we're going to join NATO. And then all of a sudden, last minute, he's like, nope, changed my mind. And it caused all kinds of issues. And the president ends up fleeing in 2014. And so as retaliation, Russia comes in and takes Crimea, especially where Crimea is located was a tactical move for Russia. So for Russia, ultimately, really what's to gain is just having that control back, keeping the West out of Ukraine. There are some significant ports and spots in Ukraine that is smart in his sense for him to take control. But, his end game too could just be wanting to have a legacy to leave behind that he thinks is a positive one.
Right. I guess I can see trying to have like a bigger sphere of influence. If they kind of have their thumb on Ukraine, it's more advantageous to them than obviously.
Yeah. And he's claiming that he's trying to denazify Ukraine, which is ironic considering the president is Jewish.
Yeah, that was I think I told you, this week as we were kind of looking forward to this, there were a few things that I said I guess border on conspiratorial that I've heard, and yeah, that's stuff we can dive into in a little bit later. But yeah, I guess that sounds like I've heard basically it's still almost kind of on Russia's mind, all the territory they lost when the USSR fell, and I guess all those places, I guess in his mind, kind of still the old empire kind of thing, and just wants to keep as much of it as he can.
Yep.
Along those lines. Okay. So another thing that I guess the reason this is so big in the news is I personally, most of the time, I like the idea of us helping people who need help. Like, I hate seeing stuff like this happen, but at the same time, if this came to the point where people are getting drafted and this really becomes a big global conflict, I don't love sending, U.S. troops to fight in other countries that have stuff like this going on. So what is the potential of this becoming some kind of global conflict? Like, is this likely to stay there, or is that hype that they're talking this could be World War III kind of thing?
So, I mean, will it turn into World War III? I doubt it. I will say that Biden has been smart so far in what he's been doing and the tactics he's been taking. And I mean, you're always going to have both sides of it. The people that are like, he's not doing enough, we need to do something. And then you're going to have the people that are like, okay, he's being smart. Ultimately, we have to look at what Russia could possibly do to retaliate. Russia, it's not like other countries where there's not as much of a risk that there might be for invading or going in there, or we can already know, what impact we might have. Russia has a lot of artillery. They've got a lot of nukes, and they have a very unstable leader who is very quick to pull the trigger. So, you know, right now the EU and United States, they're just imposing those sanctions to try to prevent World War III. The only way I can really see a World War III happening is if Russia takes Ukraine and then starts pushing into the NATO countries. Then, obviously NATO has to respond, and then that's where you start to have an all-out war. And even then, I don't think it's going to be on the same scale as the previous wars were. I would hope that we've learned a lot from them. Russia also doesn't, I don't think Russia was expecting this invasion to go the way it has gone so far. So
Right.
it's showing the world that, hey, Russia might not be as bad as we thought they were. Their ducks are not in a row. So
Right.
I think the world is seeing that. And, if there was a World War III, I don't think it's going to even be in the same, context as the prior wars were.
Right. Yeah, I've heard some people point that out that I before this really started, they were almost saying that Russia kind of flexes their muscles a little bit, and their military is not as modern and big and bad as they kind of lead on that it is. But so I guess, do you think there's any possibility of them pushing through? Because I know that was kind of, I know the U.S. sent some troops into, was it Poland?
So yeah. So, well, right now our troops are being stationed kind of on the outskirts. We're not going into Ukraine to fight the Russians. They're trying to take over Kyiv. That's like the big thing you see in the news, that they're trying to conquer Kyiv right now. That's one of the key spots to take, and they're having a lot of trouble doing that. And the United States can't really send in troops to fight the Russians, but they can't stop volunteers. So you might have seen in the news, you have all these volunteers going. So there are US veterans that were special forces, have some type of military training, that are volunteering to go. There was a link I had recently shared of how you can sign up to do that. But they have volunteers going, and those volunteers, are not being sent by the United States as the United States military. So it's kind of like a loophole.
Right.
But right now, if you were to look at like a map of where so far the Russians have kind of conquered, it's really just around like the edge of where Russia is, and kind of the bottom near Crimea. Kherson is where they took over recently. But and the nuclear plant, you might have seen that was a big one.
Right.
But they're having a lot of trouble in Kyiv. As much as Russia will deny it, they are losing soldiers by the thousands, and they have outdated equipment. They're not getting support from anyone. The one thing that other countries can do to help Ukraine is to send in weapons, to send in equipment, send in things like that, which everyone has been. And so I think Russia definitely underestimated all of that support. One of the Zoom calls I was on yesterday was with her name is Andrea Chalupa. She's a Ukraine expert. She's Ukrainian herself. And one of the things she mentioned that I hadn't known was that Russia has 90% of their military in Ukraine. Now, I will preface that to say I don't have the source on whether that is accurate. That's coming from her. She is the expert, but she was stating that Russia already has 90% of their troops in Ukraine. And the fact that they're struggling, where is Russia really going to get that extra push from? And so that kind of asked the question of, all right, what about China? A lot of people are talking about China, since China and Russia are buddy-buddy. And it seems like China is finally kind of coming to their senses and saying, like, wait a minute, this was not cool. This was not the right thing to do. And you could tell that they're picking and choosing their words carefully, and they're tiptoeing, but you can tell they don't agree with Russia doing this. So I don't think they're going to be giving Russia any support. Russia really only has Belarus right next door, and that's really it. So I I can't say one way or another whether Russia's going to win this, but I will say it doesn't look good for Russia. So I wouldn't be surprised if, finally they use all their resources, they use all their weapons, their ammunition, their soldiers are dying by the thousands, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but slowly they're going to get pushed back out.
Sure. And I guess that kind of changed. So originally I was going to ask what you thought the likelihood was that if they took Ukraine, that they would try to continue. Because I know that was really the big threat to us, was if they kept going. I guess that's still a question, but could that also have changed now that they're running into so much more resistance than they thought they were going to in the Ukraine? Like, I guess in Putin's speech, he made it sound like he thought it was going to be easy and everyone stay out of the way and we're just going to do this. And yeah, I mean, at least the way it sounded through most of the media. And that's why we like to have you on, because I hear some stuff on there, but I'm pretty skeptical of most, what I hear in the media. But it has sounded like it is not going smooth like butter, like he thought it was going to. Could that alter the potential plans of marching through and just keep going?
So, I mean, Ukraine is a big one in terms of taking over and winning them back, especially because of how much support the country has, because of who the country's president is. I mean, I have to say he's inspiring. He's out there with his troops. He's out there on the battlefield. He's not Putin. He planned on Zelensky taking off. He planned on him running to Poland. I mean, if you look at the president in 2014 that Ukraine had when, Yanukovych, when the protest started and they pushed him out, he went to Russia. He exiled to Russia. And that was just from his people protesting. Now you have an entire country coming in to take over and Zelensky staying put. So if Russia were to take over Ukraine, I would be concerned that then he can pursue other countries, because if Ukraine couldn't hold them back, I can't imagine that these other smaller countries can. With that being said, if Putin's end game is to kind of rebuild the Soviet Union, some of those countries have become part of NATO already. So he really can't push into those countries. So it doesn't leave him really many options on how to kind of rebuild this regime that he had. But if he does conquer Ukraine, then, who knows what he could do next, especially because right now, a lot of the Russian soldiers, it's kind of mixed, where you see them they're doing atrocious things. They're shooting up hospitals and all kinds of places. And there's a lot of civilian casualties. But then you see the other Russian soldiers that are like, this is not what we were told was going to happen.
Right.
We're blindsided. And they're laying down their arms. And, you see the videos. And you know what? At the end of the day, you always got to question what you're watching, because you never know if it's true or not.
Right.
A lot of people will talk trash about TikTok and downplay the app, but you know what? It's a good resource for seeing a lot of firsthand videos coming from inside. Again, could they be fake? Sure. But what it seems like is there's a lot of these Russian soldiers who are basically admitting that this is not what they thought. And they're starting to side with Ukraine. They're laying down their arms. They don't want to fight. At the same time, they're not doing it out of their beliefs. The ones that are fighting, they're doing it because they're scared. So, Putin when everything in Syria happened, and I'm kind of getting off track, but it's important.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
When everything in Syria happened, Putin was sick. He was sick in the head. He would bomb certain areas, and when aid workers would come in to provide aid to the civilian casualties, he would go around and bomb it again to then kill the aid workers. And it was really sick. And he would say, oh, we weren't aiming for them. We were aiming for, ISIS. Meanwhile, he's over here shaking hands with President Assad, who was the president of Syria. At the end of the day, they all deny it. You see in Syria the chemical warfare, and everyone points the finger as to who did it. One thing, I don't know if it was too much in the news, but it was part of my research, is when there's accusations of criminal acts of war, they have to be investigated to see what's going on. And we wanted to come in and investigate the chemical warfare going on in Syria. and Russia was pretty much in control of that area and was like, yeah, you can come, give us a moment, long story short, you could tell they were covering their tracks and covering it all up so that nothing would be found. So Putin is known for his tyranny. He's known for being psychotic. He's known for doing really atrocious things. And so a lot of people are scared. There was a potential president in Ukraine who was more pro-Western, and he got poisoned. He was poisoned so bad that it disfigured his face. And he survived, but he lost the presidential election ultimately and everything. And there's no doubt that Russia was probably behind it. So you have these soldiers that are only fighting because they're terrified. Putin had either just passed a law. This I didn't research too much more. But there was a Russian influencer who pretty much said, this is the last video I can really make because there's this new law that if we support Ukraine or provide aid to them or do anything to help them, that we're facing 20 years in jail, and that influencers were getting arrested left and right. Who knows if it's true? But the one thing that stands to be the same is that the fear is there. Even if it's not true, you have these influencers hearing this and passing this information along, and they're fearing for their lives and their families, and so they're standing down. And then you have the ones that they don't want to speak up, and you can't blame them when you're not in their position. I have 3 kids myself, and I can't imagine if right now, what I'm doing right now, if I could face 20 years in jail, is it worth it to lose my family over? So that's kind of what's going on with the soldiers and all of that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that a lot of soldiers aren't even really down with what's going on. I have a couple of comments here. I'm going to pull up real quick. Both of them, one of them's kind of 2-part, all from Papa John here, my dad. This one was a while back. He said, didn't the U.S. and the Western Allies promise the Soviet Union during talks over the reunification of Germany that they would not allow NATO to expand its membership east of the Cold War border?
Yes. So there was talks about that. I'm going to be honest. I don't know on paper what the ultimate decision was, because there can be talks about it, and there can be promises made, but if there's no agreement, and that's kind of where the arguments have been, that there was no written agreement that this is what was going to be, all in all the decision, because right now that's what Putin is claiming to want. He wants to have it solidified where Ukraine can never join NATO. If that was already done, Putin wouldn't be saying that's what he wants. He would be saying, you guys promised me and you lied, rather than, like, he wouldn't be chasing the same thing twice. So that tells me we never had a written agreement saying, that we wouldn't start pushing east and pushing closer to Russia with these NATO partnerships and memberships. On top of that, it's not even like, we have chased these countries, but if you look at right now with Ukraine and what Zelensky wanted with joining NATO, and even prior to him, in 2000 and 2008, I believe it was, they were looking to join NATO. That's actually what started the protests with that president, with Yanukovych, and the one who ended up going to Russia to seek refuge, which is funny. He was going to be starting the process to join NATO. And then when he didn't, that's when Ukraine was like, what the heck? So it's not even at the end of the day that we're even chasing them. They want to be a part of NATO. And, if they want to be a part of NATO, well, NATO has an open door policy. So who's Russia to say they can't join when they're the one that wants to join? So, again, Ukraine aside, because there are other prior Soviet countries that have joined NATO. At the end of the day, I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe there was any written agreement that we weren't going to push east. That is just what Putin has been claiming.
Okay. Yeah. So it could have been maybe, don't worry, we're not going to chase this, but it's been 20 years, 20, 30 years now. It's kind of, what you're saying is that's not necessarily a written agreement somewhere. It was just kind of an understanding.
Yeah, I think a lot of that too is also Putin pushing and pushing and pushing, saying this, trying to justify his thing for coming into Ukraine. A lot of his accusations have been false.
Sure. His other question here, which, like I said, is kind of two parts here. He said, what do you think Putin meant when he referenced denazifying certain elements of the Ukrainian government? And then he said, is that the Azov battalion? Azov? I don't know how to pronounce that, but is that... I did see something about that, and it sounds like a neo-Nazi National Guard unit. I don't know if that's... I don't know how their military works, if that necessarily reflects any, obviously, government
I was kind of
views,
confused on that as well.
Yeah. To be honest with that one, I'm not sure. There's also, so within Ukraine, there is parts of Ukraine that aren't as pro-Western as the rest of Ukraine. You know, there's these small sections that that are more pro-Russia, you know.
Right.
I'm not really sure with because to be honest, when it comes to the neo-Nazi stuff, I don't play a lot into that, just because for me it's absurd. You know, but it's kind of like it's kind of like saying, you know, we need to go into, I don't know, Dubai and get rid of ISIS or something like that. You know, it's like there could be these groups in small areas, but he's more referring to, when Putin tries to justify it, he's more referring to the government. And he's saying that the government is corrupt. And that's where Zelensky kind of was like, well, hold up, wait a minute, I'm Jewish. Like, what are you talking about? There's also in Ukraine has a very big Jewish population. You know, they have even like the and forgive me because religion is not my expertise, but they have some type of Jewish like headquarters there. I should have definitely done a little bit more research on that. My husband studies it, and he was even saying, you know, it's kind of like how the Pope is, you know, with the Catholic religion. Judaism, there's a big main part of Judaism that's in Ukraine, which I hadn't known. So the idea of there being all these like Nazis still left in Ukraine and everything, it's absurd. As far as that battalion, I don't want to give you the wrong answer. You know,
Sure.
For me, it kind of it reminds me of Syria, when you had all these different groups fighting, and you have, you know, these different you have the pro-Assad fighters, you have the ISIS fighters, you have the rebels. And so it could just be that there's, you know, a small group of militia over there in the part that's more not as Western as the rest of Ukraine is.
I guess that's kind of what I meant, yeah, regarding their organization, because I looked up that battalion earlier, and it said it was part of the Ukrainian National Guard, and I was like, if that's more like a militia group, you know, maybe they're just kind of organized the way that group wants to. And I have seen on the news some of the areas that Russia's marching into. I've seen some of them basically like, yeah, welcome, like come on in, and that could be more the pro-Russian areas, like you were saying.
See, and I was wondering if the denazification wasn't necessarily that. I gotta be careful how I say this. Wasn't necessarily that they were pro-Nazi, but they had similar views to the Nazi Party, other than
not necessarily racial,
not necessarily the Holocaust side, but the way that they ran the country. I was wondering if that's maybe what he meant by that.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing you got to take into account is President Zelensky is going in a whole different direction right now. And the president before this, Poroshenko, he's the one, and I believe it was during his time, that battalion became part of the National Guard over there. And that was before Zelensky's time, right before. So, you know, at worst case scenario, let's say they are a Nazi type of militia and everything. You know, they came into power during Poroshenko's time, and now Zelensky just took over recently. So who knows what direction he's going in. And I just find it funny that Putin didn't do this back then. He didn't care about this back then when they became part of the National Guard. If this is his true reasoning and his true, end game is, oh, they have a Nazi government and Nazi militia, and we need to get that out of there. Why now? Why now suddenly, when you have a pro-Western president, are you bringing that up?
Right. Sure.
So that battalion was incorporated years ago, and I'm almost positive under Poroshenko. Whether or not they really are true pro-Nazi, I haven't even looked into that too much. But if that's really his beliefs, you got to ask yourself, why didn't Putin do all of this back then? That was what, 6 years ago?
Right. Sure. Yeah. And I know that's kind of a buzzword here too. If there's a group you don't like, that's kind of the word you throw at them. So it could be possible that that's just something to say because if you call someone that, you're pretty much going to have universal approval of attacking them. But so going back to how this could kind of affect the United States, because that's really kind of our main concern. You mentioned earlier that China's kind of backing away from this. I know they've kind of had ties with Russia before, and they're kind of, if not friends, at least enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot in the news lately, even before this invasion started, with China and Taiwan. And I know some people were kind of saying that if Putin's able to march into Ukraine and take it no problem, that might kind of embolden China to do the same thing with Taiwan. On the flip side, with some of the resistance that Russia's running into doing this, do you think that might potentially scare China out of doing something or make them second guess that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what worries me is Putin said, no, I'm not going to invade Ukraine. I'm not going to invade Ukraine. I'm not going to do that. And then I don't know where we were blindsided, and he went and he invaded Ukraine. And it was something that he guaranteed he wasn't going to do. Was that part of his game plan? Probably, to throw us off. So now when we see China, China's saying like, yeah, Russia, that's not cool. Why'd you do that? Could they be throwing us off? Yeah, possibly. Do I think that they are hesitating if they were going to do it because of what they're seeing with Russia? 100%. And I think, for China, not only are they seeing what's going on with Russia and second guessing it, but I think the world is going to be like, no, enough. This Russia just did this. We're not doing this again, China. Like, we're not doing this. And, we always come back harder and stronger. So seeing what's working and what's not working for Russia would help us if we needed to kind of take the same stance with China. So I do think China is definitely kind of taking a second and being like, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't do this. At the same time, Russia has had sanction after sanction after sanction, and it hasn't really stopped them before. And a lot of the sanctions that we've imposed on Russia, we really would not be able to impose on China. A lot of the world relies really heavily on China. And I mean, if you just look at anything in your household, you pick something up, chances are it was made in China. And so, with Russia, a big part of Russia's economy is wheat, for example. So, they're a big producer of wheat. They like Turkey is one of their biggest buyers. So right now the price of wheat with that is shooting up. Yeah. But even with oil, I think it's 7% of the oil that we get comes from there and stuff. So Russia doesn't produce a whole ton. I mean, they're one of the biggest economies, but it's nothing compared to China. So when we look at the sanctions that we've imposed on Russia, we've been able to do it, and it's still not really affect us too bad. Practically it's been doable. And it's even little things like not being able to compete in the Olympics, not allowing certain Russian students to even attend university here in the U.S., not allowing Russia TV shows to air, channels. They're removing channels from the lineups of different TV providers, just things like that. Like a lot of, I don't want to say little things because they do add up. Sure. And of course there are bigger sanctions like with SWIFT, which is basically how it's I don't know if you know much about SWIFT, but that's how you make international transactions. So Russia's getting blocked from that. And there are bigger things in that sense. But, you know, if we, and airfare, you know, airfare too, they're not allowing certain airfare with Russia. So if we try to do stuff like that with China, you know, if we say to China, like, we're shutting down your ships from coming in, we're shutting down any planes coming in from China, that's going to hurt us really, really bad. So if China tries to take Taiwan the same way Russia is trying to take Ukraine, it leaves us asking, what can we do to stop them? That's different. That's not just imposing sanctions, because you really have two options. You got boots on the ground or you got sanctions. So what more can you really do? Right. So if we're not putting boots on the ground in Taiwan to push back China, then we're doing sanctions. But something tells me it's not going to work out the same. So China might have a leg up in that sense. That's just my personal opinion. You know, I've been more focused on Russia and Ukraine than I have China and Taiwan. And I can say the news coverage has been more on Russia and Ukraine. So there can be a lot more going on behind the scenes with China and Taiwan than we even know right now.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times with China, just because they say something, you know, I think most people don't automatically buy that. But yeah, it would be a lot harder to sanction somebody who you rely on pretty heavily, you know, as much as we do on China.
Yeah. What's hard too is, and we saw this with Syria, with China and Russia being buddy. So let's just say it comes down to the UN Security Council to impose sanctions. The UN Security Council is consisted of temporary countries, members, and you have 5 permanent members, which is US, Russia, China. You have like the big key players, the UK. And when everything was happening with Syria, the US would impose these sanctions. And in order for it to get passed, you need all 5 of the permanent members to approve it. And if just one vetoes it, it doesn't matter if all 10, you know, temporary members approve it. You know, you can have 14 out of the 15 total. If just one of the permanent members does not approve it and vetoes it, it's that sanction can't be passed. And that's what we saw with Syria. Syria, you know, you had the chemical warfare, you had all kinds of craziness going on. We were like, well, we need to put these sanctions on Syria. And Russia was like, nope, veto. And just because of their veto, we couldn't do it. So now if Russia, you know, let's say they win or don't win, either way with Ukraine, you know, they're going to be in their feelings because they ran into all this resistance and the world was against them. And that's why I think China too is picking and choosing carefully, because Russia is really China's only chance at anything. Because let's say China does start something and it comes to the table with the UN Security Council and we say, hey, we're going to impose these sanctions. Everyone's going to pass it. UK, France, US, we're all going to pass it. Russia's going to be the only questionable one. And so China wants Russia on their side to veto those sanctions. So, you know, with China, if they got Russia on their side still, then Russia can just veto that and China's boom in the door and not even having those sanctions that the UN Security Council proposes.
Right. So while we're talking about sanctions, because I had another question, but while we're talking about sanctions, one of the things we heard during was it the State of the Union or maybe it was a speech before that?
He gave about putting the sanctions on Russia the day that Russia invaded.
Or the day, something like that, right around there.
And everyone kept asking President Biden, why don't you sanction him today? And how do you put a sanction on a person?
Yeah, we were kind of talking about what exactly that means. And I'm like, I know you can travel ban somebody, but I don't know beyond that what exactly that means.
Yeah, I mean, there's all different kinds of ways. So when you think of a sanction, you know, like I just described, you think of the UN Security Council, which that can be a process. They have to propose a sanction. They can meet quickly. They propose a sanction. It has to get voted on. And then, you know, boom, it's put in place. But then you have other sanctions that you don't really need. You don't need the agreement to impose them. You know, if the US is, let's say, dealing directly with Russia with something, or you have organizations dealing with them. No one can tell us what we can and can't do in that sense. So, for example, what I mentioned with the universities, you know, the United States said certain students of Russian citizens, and I'm talking like the oligarchs, you know, certain prominent Russian
Right.
people, their kids cannot attend university in the United States. And certain things with just access to banking, or the Olympics, you know, the Paralympics, saying like, we're not allowing Russian athletes to participate. We saw that in 2018 too, with the Olympics with Russian athletes. You know, stuff like that are sanctions that are quick and easy to be imposed. So, you know, things that can hurt, not really Putin, because who knows, Putin could care less, you know, but it turns his people against him. So if we're
Sure.
imposing sanctions where we don't need the UN Security Council to approve, you know, we can do certain things on a smaller scale and start imposing all these sanctions. If you look, I was looking at the list earlier today. If you look at the list of sanctions that different countries have imposed, and I'm not talking about the UN, you're just looking at the countries, you know, those are the ones. The lists are long, and they're I don't know if I even still have it up. I do. So to give you an example, uh, individuals. So the foreign assets of the Russian president, his foreign minister, the defense minister have been frozen by certain banks in certain countries. Certain people they placed a travel ban on. The U.S. is also sanctioning top state-owned bank executives. So it's not just that they're sanctioning the country, like they're putting all these sanctions on people, and that's something that can be done super quick with the flick of a pen. They can target anyone they want, because if the United States says to a Russian politician, hey, you're on our new no-fly zone, that what can that politician do? You know, that's how you put it on individual people. And then the end game, you know, it sucks for those people. It really does, especially even just with casualties of war. You know, citizens all the time get stuck in the crossfire of the governments, and it sucks. But if I'm an American and my president was being dumb, and I need to, you know, get access to my funds, or I need to go fly to I don't know, London to see a family member, and I can't because of the sanctions put against, you know, flying, you know, people flying to the United States, then I'm going to be pissed off. And so
Right.
that's really the goal with all of these. I mean, this is a long, I'm looking at it right now, like this is a long list of sanctions. They sanction every little thing that they can that's going to get approved quickly, because they don't need to make a process. They don't need to go through this UN Security Council. It's not the UN imposing these sanctions. They don't chance China vetoing it. So they're getting this done as quickly as possible. And one way to kind of help people see it in a easier to understand way is look at COVID. How many countries have said, no, if you fly to my country, you need to have a negative test. You need to have the vaccine. Like that alone can be technically seen as like a sanction. If you don't have a vaccine, you can't come to my country. You know, you can't fly in, or you're going to be isolated. It's really just each country having its own like rules and policies and stuff put in place. So that's how, to answer your question of, you know, how can you sanction a person? That's how, you know, all these different people are in different categories, and they're just making these rules as they go that are affecting these people.
Sure. Um, so another, I guess, question is I guess this is more of a personal opinion question. Um, regardless of how you vote or party, really a lot of this, I'm like, I don't know the answer. Cause like I said before, I'm not in favor of putting American boots on the ground unless it's an absolute necessity for our interest. But at the same time, you know, I hate just watching stuff happen. So, excuse me. On the one hand, you know, I guess, do you think these sanctions are really the best thing we can do for now, or is there some other action we should be taking? And then
Yeah.
I guess to add to that, one of the questions I saw is you know, somebody made the good point that, like you said, China kind of wants Russia as their friend. They don't want to upset them too much. And basically, is there a point where we can cripple Russia so much with our sanctions that they kind of have to turn to China, and we kind of inadvertently create a friendship that we don't really want? I mean, is that any kind of possibility or concern? Or
I mean, if they turn to China, I don't think that they're building a friendship any more than is already there. I mean, they're not best friends, and I don't think that they would become best friends by Russia going to China, because think about it. Russia did something stupid. China's saying in a roundabout way, you did something stupid. And now Russia's going to come to China and pull China into their mess, trying to look for help. And if China says yes, I guarantee you it's not going to be because they're best friends. They're going
Right.
to feel like they have to. They're going to feel, they're going to be reluctant, and they're going to feel like they have to. And the only thing I can think of is them wanting to keep basically the only friends that, big power friend that they really have. I don't think China would really step in. And so your question was kind of two-part. To
Right,
answer
sure.
the first part, regarding what we can do more with the sanctions, that's really tough. Because we can't just go in there without risking Putin losing his marbles and shooting off nukes. He's said it in his speeches without saying it. Like, what he's saying.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to prevent. And that's why really, no one's kind of just gone in and started lighting up the place with the Ukraine soldiers. We're doing right now what I feel is best. We're sending supplies, and we're really coming together as a world. You see all the support, you see the volunteers, which to me, that's huge, and I am sure maybe that's been done before, but I've never seen it like this, where I see left and right United States and British veterans and everyone volunteering and going over there to fight as a volunteer. And seeing that, knowing that's the loophole. United States, we can't send people over, but the fact that they're going over there and fighting, that to me is really the best we can do right now. We're supplying them with weapons. We're being careful. They wanted President Zelensky wanted a no-fly zone. NATO said no can do, and it sucks. But we have to understand that at the same time, we need to really pick and choose our battles carefully to not escalate this, without warrant. So again, providing those weapons, providing aid, providing relief, the way that these surrounding countries around Ukraine just opened their doors like it was nothing is really, really the best thing right now. Having the troops set up on the borders, ready to go, and just the different organizations, like if you've seen with Elon Musk and Starlink, how it was a simple tweet. Someone was like, "Hey, Elon, we need your Starlink over here for internet." And Elon was like, "Done."
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that was cool.
it was amazing. And things like that is what's really helping Ukraine. So it seems like we're kind of doing everything we can short of putting boots on the ground, which we can't right now, because if we do, that's it. Like Russia, they're going to feel backed into a corner. Like, all right, now you've crossed the line. Putin's very volatile. So he's going to have that. You cross the line, boom, and he's going to push that button. And then that's it.
I guess that was kind of one of the concerns of, like I said, is there's a certain amount we can do without putting boots on the ground, that, here's what we're able to do. And, but then at the same time, is like, if you do too much too early and you kind of throw, if you go all in, here's everything we're going to do. If they keep going, you kind of give them nothing to lose at that point. And then it kind of turns into like, well, I mean, I'm just going to keep going. And what else are you going to do short of putting boots on the ground? And like you said, kind of escalating it beyond what it needs to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really, I guess that's the thing. This to me has seemed like it could be all talk and it doesn't escalate that much, and it's kind of talk. Or if somebody plays this wrong and oversteps or does too much, then it could kind of escalate quickly. Another comment from Papa John here. The United States recently provided intel on Russia to the Chinese government. The Chinese government then gave it to Russia and told them where they got it. How would that kind of dynamic play into this three-way relationship? Relationship.
Can you bring up the first part of that?
Yeah. So the United States recently provided intel on Russia to the Chinese government. I had heard about that. I'm not super familiar with that. The Chinese government then gave it to Russia and told them where they got it.
Yes. So that's is he, well, I don't know if he can answer, but is that the conversation where the audience member was like, where'd you get that information from? And the guy was like, our intel or declassified information.
We'll say I guess he's watching. Yeah, he'll probably answer him in a second. But I had heard about this, but I'm not super familiar with what happened.
Yeah. So so that's definitely going to put a strain on it. And I think it kind of, again, it goes back to China treading lightly, and I think finally realizing that they're on the wrong side of things. So at the same time, what do I want to say? The United States is also being strategic, and they are, I think, with China being a big power along with Russia and them being buddy, the United States, I think, is also trying to kind of poke the bear and instigate in a sense. So Putin is he's very non-trusting. You know, he's the type where if he thinks that someone is a spy or he thinks someone in his inner circle is against him, he's pulling that trigger. And I think that right now that's what's kind of happening is with that type of situation. You know, I don't know. I couldn't find where exactly the information came from. If I'm thinking of the same conversation that he's talking about, the guy just kept saying, you know, it's declassified information. You know where we get our declassified information from, and like in a roundabout way, wasn't showing the receipts, but it could just be a strategic move on poking the bear, trying to disrupt relations between Russia and China, trying to get China on our side, and we kind of see that slowly happening. That China, I think, is really starting to realize that Russia made the wrong move. And again, it can all be a facade. You know, China could be playing us and have its own plan with Taiwan and then saying like, yeah, you know, screw Russia. We're not with Russia. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're taking over Taiwan and China and Russia are still best friends. So who knows?
Right. That's kind of, I guess, as I don't know the word, as off the cuff as Putin seems sometimes and just kind of chaotic. I think China is one of the countries that seems like they're really good at misleading and decepting. So that's every time that they kind of seem like they're not down with what's going on, I kind of take it with a grain of salt. I'm like, okay, I mean, I hope that's how you feel, but
yeah. And I'm hoping that the United States and China start to form a better partnership here. You know, with China taking the stance that Russia did not make the right move, I'm hoping they're genuine. But I think we don't give China enough credit on just how smart they really, really are. But right. I do hope that it's genuine. I do hope that the United States is seeing that China is really disagreeing with Russia and now trying to kind of pull them our way and put them against Russia.
Sure. I guess I know we're kind of getting towards your deadline here, but one of the ones that I honestly don't know enough to know if this is in the realm of conspiratorial or not, but just one of the things I read that I was curious about and didn't know if you'd know much about or not, but I saw that you know, one of Russia's possible motives, besides just trying to get the boys back together again and have some kind of buffer between them and NATO, was you know, there's a lot of talk about some biochemical labs in Ukraine and that maybe these strikes were targeted. One of the things said, you know, in his speech before they invaded was he was really specific about the phrasing that this was a special military operation. and that was kind of one of the reasons is maybe they're seeing some of these biochemical labs that the U.S. and NATO have funded in Ukraine, and they don't like that, and they're trying to get rid of those. Is that know anything about that, or is that a real thing or possibility? Or
so I mean, that I've seen that too, that claim going around. I don't think that was accurate information in that sense. Again, Russia could have invaded at any time. I definitely stand my ground on the sense that, a pro-Western president came into play who wanted to join NATO, and Russia said, you know what, that's it. Like, I'm done. We told you not to join NATO. We're coming in. We're taking over. These other accusations that, that, like you said, the labs and everything. I saw something on that said that there wasn't any. There were labs, but they weren't any type of like chemical warfare or anything like that set up. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't believe it. I'll tell you my personal opinion. I don't believe it. I think that Putin is good at spitting out information in any way he can to justify what's going on. So I don't think it's true. At the same time, regardless, whether or not they're there, Ukraine is strategic to conquer for Russia, just based on, the land, the territory, the ports, the history, just gaining that power back. It's strategic for Russia regardless. But I personally, I think it's all just news that, Putin is starting to spew out there to try, same thing with the Nazi stuff, to try to get people to agree with him doing what he's doing. So Russia's had a disinformation campaign for a very long time to throw out all this stuff. And
yeah, I mean, it sounds like Putin's a politician, and they're gonna pick and choose the information that kind of suits them and go with that to make what they want to do sound best case.
Not just a politician, but a dictator.
Right.
Psycho.
So as we kind of wrap this up, I guess as we move forward in this, things to be looking out for. I mean, what's kind of the best case scenario for us? Like, what are we hoping to happen? I guess one of the things we didn't really get to, but I guess it's kind of part of that is if their invasion's not going as easy as they thought, the world stage is kind of turning on them in a way more than they thought might happen, and even China is kind of distancing themselves from what's going on. Really, like, how can Putin walk this back? What's kind of the best case scenario? And then on the flip side, what's the worst case? How could this kind of unravel and really start hurting?
I mean, worst case scenario is World War III. Putin takes over Ukraine, starts pushing more and more. Do I think that he would have the guts to push into a NATO country? No, I don't think he's that stupid. But that would be worst case scenario. Second to that is him just taking over Ukraine, putting in one of his puppets, into the government. It becomes a, pro-Russia government again. And he has controls, basically what he did with Crimea. Best case scenario is he walks away with his tail between his legs and realizes, that he lost. And even that's kind of scary, because knowing Putin's personality, he won't take that lightly. And Russia is known for its cyber attacks. So,
right.
I could see Putin saying, you know what, I have to bite the bullet on this one. Like, we can't, if it's true that he has 90% of his forces in Ukraine, then he's almost at his end, and he probably will lose very soon. This has only been going on for a very short amount of time.
Right. Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Sometimes you're at war for years. I mean, look at Syria. They've been at war for years. So everything has been happening and unraveling for Putin so quickly. So if he walks away, and this is me just thinking, I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, but I could see him then committing cyber attacks on countries. I mean, He's done it before. There was all that whole voting situation years ago with Russia, and you see them hacking systems left and right. That's their thing. So could they then bring on cyber warfare and be stronger at that as retaliation? Sure. But that's really kind of the best and the worst. It's still a crappy situation. And maybe he just walks away and realizes he lost and that's it, and doesn't retaliate. But Putin is known for his retaliation. The other alternative is that agreements are made. So in my, I don't know if you got to read that paper I wrote in 2018, but in there I talked about India being a peacemaker. So whether they use India or use anyone, if they come to an agreement where Russia gets its way and says, listen, we'll stop this and we'll pull out, but Ukraine can never join NATO, then that's another situation, or can never join the European Union. And those agreements are written out, set in stone, written out. We have it. We know this is the agreement. That's also a possibility. And then they pull out. And then even then it's like, okay, what does that mean for Ukraine in the future, knowing that they'll never be part of NATO? And even if they wanted to be part of NATO, that can take years for
Sure.
the application, for all of that to happen. So, that's really kind of the different scenarios that we're looking at. I personally think Russia's not going to be successful in this. They're struggling with Kyiv. I think that every day you have more and more volunteers going over there to help fight against Russia. And they're already struggling with just who's over there now. You get more and more going over there. So I'm hoping they don't win. I don't think they'll win. I think they're going to retreat back to Russia. I think that the Russian soldiers are going to start little by little, they're going to start kind of retaliating on their own against Putin and realizing that this was not right. With that comes a whole lot of situations and issues. They might not be able to return home. They might have to, exile themselves to Ukraine or Poland or these other countries that are opening their doors. But that's really the different scenarios that I can see playing out.
Yeah, the way it's going, like we said, from what we've seen so far, it doesn't look like it's going as well for Russia as they thought. And yeah, hopefully, I think the chances of them just taking Ukraine and marching through, which seems like it would be the worst case, because that seems like the most likely road to World War III, is that they take Ukraine, march through to Poland, and keep going, and that looks less and less like a possibility at this point.
I can say if they got into Poland, they would never, it'd be game over for them, because you have all these NATO countries then coming together and whooping their butt with the highest technology equipment. Like they would be stupid to go into Poland. And I mean, Putin is up there. He's 69, almost 70 years old. So, there's not maybe 20 years left, which sounds like a lot, but look at all his time in power. It's not like there have been a whole ton of changes going on with Russia. Making change, conquering, doing all of that takes years. So even with the sanctions, we have all these sanctions. We're throwing out sanctions like I've never seen. These are the most sanctions coming from left and right. Like I said, you got the little sanctions, the coming from organizations and countries and all this. And even then, a lot of those aren't going to impact Russia for a time to come. Russia is not going to immediately see the effects of it for a while. So it might not even really be enough to deter him right now. But then eventually you're going to start to see that happen, and their economy start to cripple and everything. And then by then, that's it. They're done. They're not going to be able to go really further than Ukraine.
Right. We heard Biden say that in a speech, and kind of going back to China, kind of reconsidering Taiwan. It's maybe, even if that was in the plan to take Ukraine and keep going, even if that was in the cards originally, it's probably less likely now. They're running into the resistance that they are. Did you have something?
Yeah. So actually, two things now. So off of what you were saying, what do you guys think is the possibility that they underestimated Ukraine and they sent substandard units and substandard equipment, sent that in first, and then went, uh-oh, and now they're gearing up their forces behind all the sanctions. We have no idea what's going on within Russia right now. And then they're going to launch a full-scale attack.
That's possible, but I mean, not to answer for you if that was a question for you, but like she said, if it's true that they have 90% of their troops there already, and that kind of was their big wave of attack. I mean, it sounds like they might not have too much left.
If that was 90%, we've
Yeah,
I mean, years.
Well, that's like I said, I have heard that before, that they kind of talk their military up, and they really don't have the muscle behind it that they act like they do. It's a lot of outdated technology and not the numbers they act like they have.
Yeah, you see these scary videos of these Russians, playing with a bear, and you're like, oh, you get this image of them. But yes, it's absolutely correct. We at least know what equipment they have. We know they have really outdated equipment. We've seen their equipment, and even then, in my doctorate program, right now, we're studying data and data security and stuff. And one of the things that comes up is with today's technology, with Google Maps, and just even the military planes that are in the air, they have an app. Like my husband has the app on his phone where he's tracking the military planes, and you can see the exact type of plane it is, where it is. It's technology now is crazy. So, with the invasion, you were able to see that. If you just Google the satellite images, you can see the invasion as they came in. And that's why we were able to see I think it was 40 something miles of a convoy set up and everything. And you can see the equipment that they have, and you can see them come in. So even if they were gearing out for an all-out higher scale war, which I would bet anything is impossible, you would see it coming, but there's no way that they have this type of equipment, and they've really exhausted their resources as it is. And, at this point, with how many deaths they're seeing, Putin wouldn't still just be sitting by saying all right, now let's send in the cavalry, because the Ukraine is getting stronger and stronger with their defense each day, and they're getting more and more support. They're getting more and more weapons. So if Putin was sitting and waiting, then he's stupid.
Right. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That's
I just didn't know if it was one of those send in the light stuff, let them lower their guard, this is all you got, and then go poof, and just bulldoze the entire country.
You know what I'm picturing as you're saying that is in 300, where they're sending all the people, and they're sending the immortals, they're doing too well sending them in. But yeah, no, I mean, it seems like they would have done that by now. Like you said, Putin's kind of a proud guy. It seems like if that was the case, at this point, it would have been. But like you said, I mean, we saw for months them kind of building us up at the borders, and I think you would have seen that if they had more to throw at it.
Yeah. He's been planning this for a while, and if all of this planning was just his light work, and like you said, he's a proud person. Right now, he looks like a fool. He looks like a fool, and he's quick to pull the trigger. And if you think of the photo shoot he had with him shirtless on a horse,
Jesus, I forgot about that.
He's all about his image. And so, if this was his light work, by now he would have pulled the trigger, because he looks dumb. And he and you know what? He did capture some key cities. But in Kyiv, he's really struggling. And if you look at the map of where he captured, it's still a very small portion of the country. So, by now, I mean, he captured a key port. He captured, the nuclear power plant. So now they're really struggling with Kyiv, and more are coming. He would have pulled out the big guns by now, because Kyiv is one of the key parts, and then he would have came in and just taken that over and been done with it. So no, I think he's pushing all he has, and he's running on fumes now.
Now I guess the second to last big question I had is Putin said when this invasion started, he had no intention of occupying Ukraine. He wanted to go in, do what they were there to do, and leave. I guess if they were successful and were able to take Ukraine, is the goal to absorb that into Russia, or do you think he just wants to install a puppet and leave it Ukraine, but but have it be the Ukraine he wants Ukraine to be, or
Exactly. Yes. I mean, if you look at exactly what he did with Crimea, which a lot of people hear that word and they don't really understand exactly what Crimea is and everything. You
Sure.
know, it's the best way that I think of it as is like how Puerto Rico is to us. You know,
Sure.
it's not it's like it's a peninsula, it's its own like place. And basically Russia annexed it. So it's not like you don't say Crimea is like in Russia, but basically Russia came over and kind of took control of it. So with Ukraine, you know, Ukraine, it's not like it's ever been a city of Russia. Ukraine's always been Ukraine, but Ukraine was part of Russia in the sense of they're part of the Russian Empire. And then when the Russian Empire fell, which was in 1917, then came the Soviet Union in 1922. And then, you know, they were part of the Soviet Union and kind of like all one big government to make it sound as easy as possible. And then when the Soviet Union fell apart in 1991, then Ukraine was independent. They were able to think for themselves, you know, not be part of this bigger thing. So Russia just wants that power back. So they're not going to make Ukraine part of Russia, but they definitely will kick out the government and input a Russian puppet. And, you know, they're going to be able to basically own, like, tell Ukraine what to do without it, you know, being part of Russia.
Right. So I guess at this point, the way it looks likely, that was kind of the best case for Russia. And then I guess the last big question and what could affect the world the most is you know, assuming they lose so badly. You know, we keep saying Russia or Putin's kind of a proud guy. Is it possible that he just loses so bad that he's like, fine, and hits a button? I mean, that is he too unpredictable to even say?
He's very unpredictable. I would hope to God that that would not be the case. You know, he is very unpredictable, and I think even if you were to try to look that up on the internet, the media, the government probably doesn't even want to address it to cause alarm.
Sure.
Who knows? I mean, if he's the type where it's I'm going down, I'm taking everyone with me,
Right.
he might. But at the same time, you know, he's been in power for so long. He still has he's 70, but you know, he can live another 20, 25 years, who knows, still in power. And he might say, all right, you know what? I'll take my loss this time, but I'm going to learn from my mistakes and I'm going to, you know, come back stronger. And he might have different ulterior motives. I mean, if you look at President Assad with Syria, you know, with everything that we went into Syria, the U.S. had boots on the ground in Syria. You know, that they were fighting left and right. The president was accused of chemical warfare, all this craziness. And now it's kind of died down, but the president's still a president. He's still there. He didn't get kicked out. You know, he didn't get pushed out of power. It's just amazing. So with Putin, you know, he's probably just, I don't think he'd push a button. He's probably going to put his tail between his legs, but I think he's then probably going to focus his intentions and come back and maybe do something differently in the future, or, you know, but if I had to guess if he would push the button, I don't think so. But
Okay.
I would just say I hope not, but I really doubt he would, because it does come back down to the pride too. You know, he's a prideful person, so I don't think he would go out that way. But hey, look at Hitler. So
Right. Well, I guess that's why I ask. Yeah, is on the one hand, it seems like he could just say never mind, bad idea, and hopefully in 2 years everyone forget. You know, the news cycle's fast. 2 years, maybe people forget about it. But yeah, at the same time, I know with Russian citizens even seeming like they're not behind this.
Yeah. With Putin too, just one quick thing to add with that, it's his legacy. You know, he's always been like with like the shirtless on the horse. He's been about his legacy. So, you know, if you look at Hitler, Hitler had a plan, and Hitler had this idea of, you know, that that his way was the right way. You know, he felt strongly about his convictions, and he went about these atrocities. And when he realized he was backed into a corner, he took his own life. You know, he didn't push a button and then do all this other stuff because he felt strong about his convictions. So same thing with Putin. You know, he feels what he's doing is right. And if he's backed into a corner, I don't think he wants to diminish his legacy since he thinks he's doing the right thing by doing the wrong thing. You know, that's
right. Sure.
Wants to leave. So
I guess that's the thing. He's a proud guy and he's a kind of chaotic guy, but he's a smart guy too. And that I guess that's the thing. I don't think he's stupid enough to do something like that.
I'm not going to say he doesn't have them, but I'm going to say he doesn't have them. He doesn't have the cojones to push that button. But he is a loose cannon, and you can never really predict him.
Not to, I mean, like I said earlier, I really don't want to drag U.S. politicians and endorse or anything like that, but I really think I don't want to say Trump is similar to Putin, but I think it was the same thing.
We're not the only two that have those weapons, though.
Right.
So it's not one of those he pushes it and then we push it and lights out. It's he pushes that. Who knows who else is going to?
I guess that was my original thing. Was he's old enough that if I'm going to lose, everyone's going to lose. Touch a button. But that was the same thing that people were like, Trump's crazy. He'll do that. And it's like, he was a little crazy. He was bold. He was proud, but he wasn't stupid. I don't think there was ever any threat of him hitting the button. Hopefully, and I think Putin's probably the same way. He's proud. He wants to win, but I don't think he's not stupid. Yeah, he's not insane enough to blow up the world because something didn't go your way. So,
yeah.
Well, you got any other questions or oops?
The only other thing I got is I've been seeing a lot of videos on TikTok, and this dude he claims he's walking around Ukraine and that all of the fighting and everything that's going on over there is just the Ukrainian government handed out rifles to the civilians and they're settling their differences and Russia's not even involved. What do you think these people are trying to accomplish in spreading that bullshit?
I think clicks.
So, well, there's a few different ways you can look at that. For views, someone wants to stir the pot and get those views up, so that could be wrong. 2, they could just be misinformed. So Ukraine and Russia, while they are two different countries and nationalities and languages, you even see I saw one video. I forget if it was a ship or something, and the guy was like, "Are you Russian? You look Russian, but we're not sure." If you think of the United States and Canada, right, we might not necessarily know who's who when fighting starts. So maybe they're seeing people fighting and they're making assumptions. The only other thing I could think of is what I said earlier, where even in the Ukraine, President Zelensky, when he got elected, had 75% of the vote. So almost that's huge. That's huge. But that's not to say that there are parts that are pro-Russia in Ukraine. So, you might have small parts. And even Crimea, when Russia invaded Ukraine, they came in with troops from Belarus and Crimea. And Crimea, you would argue, is still part of Ukraine. So who knows exactly with that video what they were seeing. They are calling on civilians, so maybe there are civilians who are like, oh, my neighbor who parked in my parking spot, that's it, I'm going.
It's like the purge for them.
Exactly, this is my chance. I saw too that President Zelensky was going to be releasing inmates who have combat experience to help fight, and I don't know to what level the inmate was had to have been incarcerated for, or exactly what the crime was, but there was a guy saying they're out here releasing murderers to come fight against the Russians to redeem themselves. And so you got to question, okay, if that happens, who's on the street? So who knows? I again will very confidently say that Russia will put out any information they can to discredit Ukraine, to make Ukraine look like they are not innocent, that that they're corrupt and they're this and they're that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of pro-Putin propaganda.
Sure.
It's kind of what I figured.
Yeah,
I just
entirely
wanted to
possible,
get
too.
somebody else's take on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know we're kind of past. I know you got a couple of kids to get to bed, so
like a lot past.
yeah.
Sorry, I hear them running back and forth downstairs, so this is my little escape.
I feel that. All righty. Well, thanks very much for coming on and answering some questions. I feel like we get definitely a better understanding of what's going on and why, at least. And yeah, I mean, the good news is since we kind of arranged this thing and decided to do this, we've really seen a kind of not necessarily a turning of the tides, but a lot better in outcome than we thought there might be at this point. So,
and things are all the time. This could be way different by Monday. So,
right, sure, of course.
My advice for everyone is just keep checking the news, keep checking. Like I said, it's funny, but TikTok, social media, seeing videos firsthand, commenting on there to get people's input, that's the best advice, and really just trying to stay on top of it. But it is ever changing, so it could all be different by tomorrow.
Sure. And I mean, this could backfire on me and be some kind of crazy endorsement, but like I said, we see a lot of stuff on the news. Do you have any source? I mean, you stay pretty up on this. Do you have any sources you recommend, or who's good at reporting on this stuff accurately?
I mean, Al Jazeera, that website, that's decent. It's hard because a lot of the news outlets, even for them, even when they have the best intentions, might not always have the most accurate information. So what I recommend is fact check with all the news, compare. We all know how we feel about CNN. Check the New York Post, check Fox, BBC. BBC has a lot of information, Al Jazeera, even the government websites, the UN website, check there. If one source says something, Google it, check other sources. That's really my best advice, because even like with the island where the 13 soldiers told the Russian warship to go F itself. Did you see that? So this Russian warship, it's the funniest thing, was coming to this island, part of Ukraine. There was 13 soldiers on the island. The Russian warship got over the radio and said, this is Russian warship, lay down your arms, surrender, da-da-da-da. And the soldier gets back on the radio and he goes, Russian warship, go F yourself. And then apparently the Russian warship blew up the island and killed them all. And it was funny to watch their reaction, but even like they were saying the president was giving them awards. I forget the exact award Ukraine has that they were giving them. They were awarding them this medal, this honor. And then all of a sudden they were alive. The news said they were alive. So, it's like you don't really know what to believe. And with the news, that's my point, is they had the best intentions. They thought they were dead. Then they found out they were alive. So, and in that sense, it's who's going to be first to report it, who's finding out the information first. So I don't have one news source that I recommend over the other, but my best advice, people are so quick to see something and believe it. Before you believe it, fact check other resources, check and question where the resources come from. Just to give you an example, the website that has all the sanctions, at the very bottom, it shows all of the resources of where they got the information. And that's what you want to look for. You want to question where the information's coming from.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much we've said on here, but I always tell people, I'm like, man, you kind of know what side of what, which news station is going to kind of have what bias. And I'm like, just read them all and kind of try to split the difference. And
yeah,
you can find sources, great, but
the common one I've seen that people aren't familiar with is Al Jazeera. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I've heard mixed things about it before, so I don't.
So that's a good one to check and then fact check them. So for anyone listening or going to be listening, it's ALJAZEERA, aljazeera.com. They are really big on covering the Ukraine war right now, and they're always talking about Ukraine, and I've seen other sources, other news sources cite them. BBC.org just cited Al Jazeera. So they're good to go on to just check each day what the update is. And then if something stands out to you, like, for example, they just had on their website about the no-fly zone, then Google it and see what other sources are reporting it to see if it's accurate. But they're pretty good.
Okay, cool.
Right.
All righty. Well, thanks again. Well, we definitely appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks.
Yep.
So that's yeah, we'll kind of wrap it up
keep
here.
Going or
We can wrap it up a little bit, but yeah, I didn't want to say this with her on there, but it seems like Putin is who a lot of news sources here try to sell Trump to be. Does that make sense? Like just this proud, crazy guy who's off the cuff and doesn't know. And I always stood, I'm like, I don't think Trump is that. He wasn't my favorite, but he wasn't that. It seems like Putin kind of is.
There's a reason they got along.
I don't think they got along, and that's what I'm saying.
Got along.
They did not.
I think here's my personal opinion.
Go ahead.
I think Trump was so much of a wild card that the reason that he waited till Biden got into office to do this with Ukraine,
I do agree with that.
Because he didn't know whether or not Trump would fucking nuke him.
And I agree with that.
Apologize for my language.
I don't care.
I think that Trump was too much of a wild card for Putin to risk letting his wild card go.
And I agree with that. And I remember a conversation I had with you one time when you were like, no, Trump's crazy. Who knows what he's going to do? And I told you, I don't mind that. I don't mind that little twitch in the eye. And it's like, man, this guy's kind of crazy for this exact reason. There was some study we saw the other day, or not study, but survey. It was like 65% of Americans said they didn't think this would happen if Trump was in office, which I know that's not a super overwhelming, but compared to the election.
I agree with that because I don't think it would have, but not because Putin didn't want to do it, but because Putin didn't know what Trump was going to do.
Well, exactly. That's a thing. If he wants to
be, okay, that's fine. We're going to go ahead and take Mexico.
But if he wants to do something crappy, like invade the Ukraine, but he doesn't because he doesn't know what Trump's going to do, to me, that's a good thing. That's why I kind of don't mind that little wild card factor. Like, this guy might hit the button. I don't know. Just my preference. Like I said, not an endorsement, but to me, I really don't mind a little bit of crazy, like in terms of, is it going to hit a button and crazy all this? Papa John here. Mutual respect does not equal
blowing up.
He's right. Mutual respect does not equal mutual friendship.
I'll agree with that.
Another example of that was when he went to North Korea. Everyone's like, why is he being buddy with Kim Jong-un? And they were talking.
I admit that. He was just saying, do it. Do it again.
That was my favorite thing is he went over there and he's like, I'm going to meet with him. I'm going to see him out. I'm going to see what he has to say. And the media jumped all over him. They're like, he's befriending Kim Jong-un. And then he went over there and he's like, you're going to stop doing all this. And Kim Jong-un is like, no, we're not. And he comes back and he's like, that little short rocket man thinks he's he wasn't his buddy. He was trying to get along. He didn't want to do it.
I saw the other day, gas prices started going up. The war in Ukraine, everything hit.
Keegan says Bush 2024.
And then I saw
no.
Which Bush?
Well, it would have to be Jeb.
Well, no, because Daddy.
I guess there are other ones.
Oh,
he's dead.
I forgot he passed away. But he's still alive.
We already got a corpse in office. Why not put another one? Let's see. I said I'd be surprised if Sleepy Joe could point out these countries on a map.
Which countries?
Probably Ukraine, but he's probably also talking about North Korea. It depends on how recently they showed him the map. If they showed him the map 5 minutes ago, he might be okay.
North Korea is the one just below South Korea. Right?
Is that the one under China? Come on, man. I don't know. That's the thing.
I don't mind a wild card, but when you're so much of a wild card that your people, the people that elected you, and the people that work with you on a daily basis don't know what you're going to do next, I think that you pass being a wild card and you become a liability.
Ty says he was talking about Russia and Ukraine. I bet he could find Russia because it's half the world map, but and that's kind of why we want to.
And that surprises me too. Russia is the largest country in the world
By landmass, yeah.
Yeah, and they've only got like 12% of the global resources. Like as massive as they are, they've only got like 12% of the global resources. That was incredible to me when I heard that.
Putin was afraid of the Cheeto Puff. I think a little bit. So I don't mind other people being a little bit afraid.
I don't think he was afraid.
That was here.
I think he was just too unpredictable.
Which scared him.
That's not
scared him,
afraid.
but
that's not necessarily intimidated. That's one of those you're just cautious.
I wish he was still cautious because he doesn't seem very cautious right now. That is one of the things that aged like milk. One of Joe Biden's campaign commercials where he's like, Putin doesn't want me in charge because he knows he'll have to respect me and he's not going to get away with all this. He's like, watch me. I'm going into Ukraine. Not as soon as he got in office, but within a year, he's like, I can probably do that.
By the way, and I know that our topic was Ukraine and Russia. Did you catch the State of the Union? Did you watch it at all?
Mm-hmm.
What was with all the hooting and hollering? I never heard that at a State of the Union before. It was like every time he'd make a point, the entire room went crazy.
There's a lot of times I don't know. Megan pointed that out too. She's like, as we're watching it, it's like everyone who agreed would stand up. I don't know if it's a tradition. Just half the room stands up and cheers at something.
But it was just one of those. He'd make a point. It didn't seem like a State of the Union. It seemed like a campaign. Like
I said that too.
Rally.
It was not. He did very little to address the state of the union. He was sitting here talking, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. It was like a campaign speech. I was like,
he did say, we're in the middle of a massive rise in inflation. Don't raise your wages, lower your prices. And I agreed with that when everybody jumped up and started cheering. You lower the prices, we keep the wages the same. There's no inflation. When you raise everything, everything just keeps
hard to lower the price
up and up.
When the cost is high also.
Yeah. But here's the thing. When the cost goes down because their prices got lowered, but that's just how inflation works.
Ty says it was the applause sign that lit up. Ignoring what Biden said, because I don't want to turn this into a tit for tat on Biden. We know where most of us are. Did you say Nancy Pelosi when he mentioned burn pits? It was the creepiest thing I've ever seen.
Because of how much of a campaign rally it seemed like.
Just turn it off.
I didn't watch the whole thing.
So
I missed the burn pits.
Because of this podcast, I was like, I got to stick this out. I got to watch this whole thing. And I wanted to die because it was bad. At one point,
Okay, for the camera, just look right there. What was Nancy Pelosi's face? I'll move the mic for you.
Until he said burn pits. Real quick, the whole thing, we all know he stutters and says stupid shit.
Yeah.
At one point, he said something like, we got to defend the Iranian people. Iranian? I thought this was Ukraine. Ukrainian, not Iranian.
Oh, shit.
I rewound it because I'm like, there's no way he said Iranian.
Iranian.
He said Iranian.
Oh,
100%. But anyway, we know what he meant. And I've said before, I'm not going to rake someone over the coals. I said it with Trump, and I'll be fair. I said it with Biden. I'm not going to hold someone over the coals for misspeaking. It was dumb, and it was funny because that's kind of his thing, as he's senile and old and crazy, and he said the wrong word. But at the end of the day, I know what he meant. But the creepiest thing of the whole thing, he started talking about the military, and I don't know why he was talking about it. It's part of what was weird. He was talking about the military and like cancer and stuff like that, because his son had brain cancer. And he said, he's like, I don't know if this is what caused it, but it's not like taking better care of our soldiers, which I'll get behind. Anything you actually have that's going to do that, I'm behind it. but he was talking about these burn pits or something. He said something about burn pits. You know, the whole time people were standing up and clapping. Like I said, I guess it's a tradition. You stand up and clap when you agree with something. As soon as he said the word burn pits, Nancy Pelosi is behind him going like this. And she's like, couldn't wait. She's like starting to stand up, and he's talking about burn pits, and she looks like a fly on shit. And she's like,
what the?
And she's like starting to stand up. It's like, what the fuck is your problem? It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
you got to look it up.
So I was over there. You know what the burn pits were?
Trash?
We're burning
Poo?
garbage.
Yeah, trash and poo.
So Middle East, and anybody that's Middle Eastern, I do apologize for this. I don't know what it is with the countries over there, but they don't have landfills. They just throw it out into the desert.
Well, yeah.
So you're driving down any of the highways through the Middle East, and you'll find a random fence that's got trash this fucking high stacked up in a corner of the fence that's just blown through the desert.
Yeah.
Well, instead of adding to that, we had our own burn pits, and we throw everything in a dumpster, and then we take the dumpster, we dump it on a pile, and then we burn the pile.
It makes sense. I mean, you get that number of troops. It's basically a small city. You're going to have a lot of trash.
What we'd always do is we'd always put it downwind of where everyone was.
Sure.
So it was on the furthest corner, always downwind. So we never had to smell it or breathe in the toxic fumes. The initial push, I can't say they always put it downwind, which could have been what he was talking about how it leads into brain cancer. Yeah,
and he said, he's like, I don't know that it was that, but and I agree. Like I said, if you can keep troops from breathing in toxic fumes, sure. I don't know why that was in a State of the Union address, but like Papa John says, that happens at every State of the Union over the last several years.
Well,
it has
been. It
just becomes it's a campaign speech cheer fest. Ty said someone fed him his campaign speech. Whoops. She lost her fingers. She did. You got to look up this video. I wish I could video share it. Nancy Pelosi. She's
okay. I was like, who, wait, where?
Megan was watching it with me live. And when we saw that happen, she was when I said, she's like, that's going to be a gift tomorrow. Like this. And sure enough, by the end of the night, the thing ended in like, what were we watching it on? I forget.
GIF or GIF?
It's GIF. I say GIF a lot, but it's GIF. I know it's GIF. The network we were watching. So I was watching a YouTuber's like live stream of it, but the stream they were using was CNN. And afterwards, even CNN, as soon as it ended, they showed everyone shaking hands, and then the first clip they had was Nancy Pelosi. It was the creepiest thing, and I don't know why she was doing it, and I don't know why. If you're gonna do that creepy motion, why when he was talking about burn pits? He was talking about infrastructure. He was talking about energy. He was talking about inflation, but man, he mentioned burn pits, and she just got amped. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I lean more towards the Democratic Party or the Democrat Party, but Pelosi is she's out there, man. Like I side with you on that one.
I wish there were term limits on some of these people too, because it's
Hey, see, and this was explained to me about the term limits. The term limit argument.
Burn pit is her state. Nice. I guess that's why she's like, represent.
But it was explained to me this way, like, and I think I told you this the other night when I was over. Mitch McConnell. Is it Mitch or
the
Mitch?
Turtle Man?
Yeah. From Kentucky?
Yeah, I think.
He's been a senator for like 85 years.
I wish he would go away too, but yeah.
Okay. You wish he'd go away? I don't like him. But the people in Kentucky obviously love it. And if he's doing good work for them, who are me and you in Missouri to say he needs to get the hell out? Yes, he affects us in the grand scheme of things, but
if he represents
really
them, he
represent
represents
us.
them. And I agree with that. Was it me and
say?
you talking about this the other day?
Yeah,
about term limits on senators and stuff?
Yeah. If he and that was just the example, we're not just talking about him. But if this senator, representative, Congress,
any of them
represents this group, who are me and you of this group to say this person's bad, get them out of there.
We're not. We have no say in their election. That's why I just wish there were term limits across the board, because it would apply to all of them. We don't get to say that about them.
If we get a really great person that is actually doing a good job and doing the job that they were elected to do, and I'm not saying, showing up and voting on a few
right,
things.
sure.
I'm saying showing up, voting, actually out, meeting with the people, finding out what their constituents want.
Sure.
Now you just term limited that person to 2 terms.
This isn't the hill I want to die on, but if that's the case, why don't we do that with the president? What if we have a president who's just killing it and bipartisan? We're like, this guy's awesome.
And get rid of the term limits. Get rid of all term limits, but make it.
Well, I'm saying we have it on the president for a reason.
Freaking do it. We have one on the president, which actually is kind of ironic. So Harry Truman came into office after FDR passed away. FDR had just got elected to his 4th term. Truman served the rest of FDR's term, passed into law the 2-term limit, and then ran and won 2 more terms and ended up serving almost 12 years. He was the last president we had serve more than 2 terms as president.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what exactly the letter of the law is. I think you can be elected twice. I don't think if you
only be elected twice. I don't think anyone else, even Johnson after Kennedy, I don't think he got elected a second time. I don't even think he got elected.
I don't know if he got elected the first time. I think he kind of
after Kennedy passed away, I don't think he ever won re-election.
That I'm not sure. And I know that people were pretty hot about Vietnam at the time.
The only president we've had die in office since FDR, then Kennedy. That was it.
Oh, since FDR. I was thinking since Kennedy. I was picturing Kennedy. I'm like, Kennedy was it? Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know exactly what the law is. I think what are we?
Yeah, we completely just jumped topics.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, we're past Ukraine. This is just the regular Unsuppressed show at this point. Except with comments and we're live.
Yeah, so this is actually what we've been trying to do, right?
Just live Unsuppressed show with comments. We've talked about it. We may have to do it often. That's kind of why
we actually need this guy that keeps commenting right now. Not Papa John, the other guy.
Ty?
Yeah, we need him in here.
He said
so
if
he
he's
the right angles.
He said with your term limits, can we get voter ID? That's racist and wrong. You shouldn't have to prove your identity to vote. I'm speaking sarcastically, of course.
Okay. All right. I thought you were serious.
You need your ID for a lot of things.
But if you need your ID to fly, you definitely need your ID. Even if it's just sliding your driver's license across the table.
That's exactly what it is.
That's it. That's it.
Have you heard much of the argument that that's racist? Requiring voter ID is racist? I
don't understand.
I think
you can get a state ID, even if you don't have a driver's license. You live in the inner city and you don't require a driver's license. You can still get a state-issued ID.
Mm-hmm. But it's racist to require that. Here's what I think. I think if you think that it's racist to require an ID, you're racist. Hear me out. Why is it racist to say that you need an ID? What is the implication there? Is that one for me?
Oh, shit. I didn't know you were out.
What is the implication by saying needing an ID is racist?
I don't know.
You don't even need the implication. No. You don't even need an implication because there are people on the news, like a lot of people in the inner cities, they can't get IDs. People can't get IDs?
Yes,
minorities
can.
I agree.
A fucking library card is an ID. As long as it has a photo on it, it's an ID. If it has your full legal name,
I think it's the cannot think of the word. Blank of low expectations. I'm blanking. Comments pick me up. But the
epitome of low expectations.
No. Bias of low expectation. God dang it. Right. I cannot think of the word.
Sorry, we're going.
Help me out. Blank of low expectations.
Okay, give me the gist of what it means, because
It's
now you're just
basically
burning
you
time.
are being racist by thinking certain people can't get IDs. Like,
The only word I can think of
the liberal argument is requiring voter ID is racist. That is literally
it's
they're
the
out there saying
epitome of low expectations. I'm pretty sure that's the word you're looking for. It's the top tier. This is the highest you can go.
but it's like a
for low
bias.
expectations.
It might be bias. I don't know. But it's
I've never heard that anybody say biased of low expectations.
God dang it. I'm trying to Google it. This is driving me nuts.
All right, let's do a poll in the comments. Who says bias? Who says
It's not
epitome?
Bigotry of low expectations. You're being a bigot by saying these people can't.
Okay.
You have low expectations for them.
Okay.
You're being racist by saying whether it's Latinos, African Americans, any of them can't get ID by saying it's
That's
racist.
assuming that you have white privilege.
I don't know.
I fucking hate white people.
Me too. Ty says I'm blanking too. Sorry. It was driving me nuts. It's bigotry of low expectations. Yes.
We were
Which starts with a
relying
B,
on you.
like bias. I was
We
on the
were
line.
relying on Ty, and Google helped us.
Dick. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how we're talking about voter ID, but yeah,
You started it, bro.
that's that. I know. I don't know how though. Soft bigotry of low expectations.
So
Yeah, same thing.
we're about out of beer. You think it's time to break one of these guys out and just keep going live?
I really have not had anything because I'm. We mentioned at the start of the show. Most people, at least watching live, probably know about this, but I'm not going to try to stick my leg up on. Yeah, I am. Screw it. I am wrapped up good. So
Tell the story.
I used a sled like a snowboard, and it didn't work out for me because I'm old and fragile. Yeah.
I fell off a 50-foot cliff and only broke an ankle. You went down a hill and shattered your leg in how many places?
Oh, there were no number of places. It was all of it. Yeah, I posted on Facebook and Instagram the pictures. If you haven't seen it, it's maybe worth checking out. But yeah, the doctor's notes that were outlining like what they did, it basically said normally there's like a main section of bone that they put the little pieces to. It literally they put in the notes. They're like there was no primary abridgment or something like that. Basically, it meant there was no big piece to put the little pieces back to. They were all just little pieces. Sweet. So that was a good time. So because of that, we had the holidays. We had Wes Smith on after Christmas, but since then, it's been tough. I'm finally getting to where I can hop around the room pretty
How
good.
did that go, by the way? I didn't catch that episode.
I think he's going to come back. It was good. I mean, I didn't agree with him on everything, but he had some good ideas. I think the whole point, besides being a campaign push for him, was also just let's talk about why you are running. I mean, he's our age. I think he's younger than us, and it was he's running. God, whose seat is it? I'm completely blanking on whose seat. Ann Wagner, maybe. Somebody pretty prominent. He's going after like somebody.
Dare he?
Well, that was kind of the thing. I asked him, like, do you have a problem with her, or are you just trying to get in yourself? And
What's he running for again?
Missouri Congress, state Congress. Yeah, second district. I don't remember. He left me a patch.
Yeah, let's see that.
Brought that in.
From the
But, I like the seal. He's got the eagle holding the rifle, and what else?
Is that the Army seal?
It's similar.
Updated?
It's similar. Yeah, Bible and an AR-15. But
actually, I was at my parents' house. Do you remember a Fleischman, EJ Fleischman from high school?
Dropping names, huh?
Oh, he's a politician.
Oh,
So yes, I'm going. To
okay. Yeah, no, you can do that
he's
then.
Not Congress. Local government, city, township, councilman.
Okay.
He's a councilman in Arnold, my hometown, our hometown, sort of for you.
For a while.
He just ran, and he ran on the Republican ticket. And my old man told me I was over there. He goes, "You were in the Marines." He goes, "Even if you've got no political experience and you're a fucking burnout with that beard and that stupid ass haircut, had you put down former Marine running and even running on the Democrat Party, you still would have freaking been a shoo-in. Everybody would have been like, oh, he was in the Marines." And they'd have outvoted and gotten this kid off. He goes, "But had you ran on the Republican ticket," he goes, "there'd have been no contest. He'd have been thrown out immediately."
You know what? That brings up a good. What do you think about requiring military experience for presidents?
I'm kind of 50-50.
That's kind of how I am.
Requiring it's good for a time of war, but as a day-to-day peacetime, I think it's kind of a gamble, because there are some people that have great. Who asked you to wait?
Papa Johnson's got to go. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, Papa John.
There are some civilians that I think have a better foreign policy,
Now that we
foreign relations.
don't have to listen to
Yeah.
Cheryl, I'm going to make sure I can hear you. We're back to normal. Yeah, it's
Oh.
different.
You gotta turn my mic up.
That's why I thought about it. I'm like, maybe you're
It's like,
quiet. You're far away from the mic.
Yeah, I was pretty far away. Sorry, I guess you guys couldn't hear me. Where was that? Oh,
Wartime versus peacetime.
So some civilians have better foreign policy and foreign relations than a military man would have. During wartime, I think it's almost critical that we have a military man in office.
What sucks is you don't know.
You never know when it's going to happen.
You don't know when a war is going to happen. So
Yeah.
whether or not he was, I mean, what if he's elected in when we're not in war?
It's more important than having a military man in office. It's more important to have somebody with good foreign relations that knows when to listen to his military advisors.
Right.
It is far more important to have that than an actual military man, because military man's going to go bomb them, blow it up.
Sure. I'll put it this way. So on the one hand, the reason I think it would be good is because they're the commander in chief. You're literally in charge, and not that you'll probably know too. I know the Army is more prominent with this. How they'll have guys who never. So there's the commissioned officers, I guess they're all commissioned officers. There's the guys who go through ROTC. They get out of college, they're instantly a second lieutenant. Mm-hmm. Then you get the guys who serve. They go through the process. They become an NCO. Then they go to, I forget what the officer school is.
Wait. What was that? They go
ROTC.
To what?
Second lieutenant.
To what?
Then first lieutenant.
I thought you said NCO somewhere in there.
No. Then I said you have the other guys, the enlisted guys.
Okay.
Who start out private, specialist, all that, and then become an NCO, like a sergeant.
An NCO.
Right. Well, unless they were first, and that's what I'm saying. Some staff sergeants, sergeant majors, go to officer school and become officers. Those guys typically get a little bit more respect from the guys than the guys who went to college and became an officer.
And that's something I think that the military needs to change. Currently, so if you enlist and then later on down the line you decide that you want to go the officer route, you are now considered a Mustang. That's what they call them.
Okay. I've never heard that term, but
yeah, when you go from enlisted to officer, at least within the Marine Corps.
I was going to say, I didn't know if that's a Marine term or everybody. Could
Might
be.
be everybody. I know it's a Marine term. They call you a Mustang. So you hit enlisted and then you're an officer. We actually had a major in my unit who went enlisted and he hit gunny, went warrant officer, got up to warrant officer 3, and then went enlisted. And he walked into a briefing where there was 3 gunnies, 6 staff sergeants, 2 lieutenants, and 3 chief warrant officer 1s and 2s. And he goes, I've held the rank of everyone in this room, and walked the hell out. So I think so currently a Mustang is limited. I don't even think they can hit full bird. I think they can only go up to lieutenant colonel. It may be colonel. I can't remember, but they can never hit general status. Well, you got to think as a colonel, you have limited control of what these guys down here are doing.
Right.
But as a general, you have total control.
Sure.
Well, as a general that was once in these boots right here, you go
play into your decision
yes.
making. So my point to all this was that seems like the most extreme example is somebody who's never served and not even gone through ROTC. Someone like Trump, instantly, boom, now I'm in charge of the military. And like you said, if you're talking about ultimate control over what other people do, that's it.
Not only someone who never served. You're talking about somebody that never served in the military, somebody that never served in any form of public office, immediately in the White House, in control of the free world.
And in that sense, I don't like it. I wish maybe you had to require it. But on the flip side, like you said, there are different times. There's times where we're at war and somebody who knows what the hell they're doing might be advantageous. At the same time, when Trump was elected, we had to fix our economy. We had a lot of economic stuff going on. And in that sense, maybe a guy who does business is the right guy. And like you said, just listen. If a military thing comes up, listen to your guys. Like they should, that's their job, is to advise you. So I'm 50-50 on it. I don't know.
Okay. What's the youngest age you can get elected to any political office?
Annie?
I don't know this.
18?
Okay, so
I mean,
we'll go with 18.
I don't know if you're talking city council. I mean,
we'll go with 18. The minimum age for president, in my opinion, should be 38, and we require 20 years of some sort of political service, holding some office. That way, you've at least got experience within how a government works.
what if you had to have a certain number of years experience, either public service or military? Like military could count.
I'll go with that. That works.
We're just spitballing ideas here.
But to have somebody that's how old was Trump? 71 when he got elected?
He could have had 20 years of both.
And he walked in with no experience.
But like I said, in that situation, I think he was the right guy for the job. Keene says, I don't think it should necessarily be required, only because of how much help they get from experts around them. Very true. And then, okay, but what about a good businessman with a really strong military right-hand man? That's kind of what I was talking about too. Yeah, if you have
he threw out his really strong military right-hand man and called him a fucking pussy.
Was that
was Mattis.
Mattis? Yeah, so the guy
that
with
was
the nickname,
that was the commandant of the fucking Marine Corps.
I like how
General James Mad Dog Mattis, and he called him a pussy.
I like how you have someone with the nickname Mad Dog and you call him a pussy. I honest to God, that whole situation, I don't even remember why that happened, or
So
I just don't care.
Mad Dog, he goes, I'd like to resign from this position. My views with the president's views do not line up. I just don't want to be here anymore.
You're a pussy.
And Trump goes, Mad Dog may be the biggest pussy in the history of pussies, maybe ever. And Mad Dog went, he's a fucking idiot, and dropped the fucking mic.
Well, sometimes it's best to part ways. So, yeah. Yeah, guys, we're way off from Ukraine at this point.
Oh.
We're just eating time at this point.
I will be honest. When all this started popping off, and there was a strong leaning towards we might have our troops on the ground, I thought about re-upping. I really thought about going back in.
See, to me, that's the last thing I would do. Because, like I said, I mean, the whole reason we had her on to talk to her is because I'm like, I don't fully understand why we're doing this, or what, not why we're doing this, but why that's happening. I understand that Russia's not necessarily a great country or not in a great leadership, and we want them to have as little influence as possible. But at the same time, if Russia marched in and just took it and we didn't do anything to them, it's like, whatever, Ukraine, like she said, even if he didn't, make it Russia, but Ukraine is on, I don't know how that affects us. I think Putin installing a puppet, like she said, Putin going in and putting one of the guys he likes in charge and making sure that Ukraine always agrees with Russia, I think that would affect us less than all the stuff we're doing to strain our relationship with Russia now. You see what I'm saying? Like, how much does who's in charge of the Ukraine? I keep saying the Ukraine, which I think is the USSR way of saying it.
Everybody is always called the Ukraine.
People keep getting pissed if you mispronounce Kiev also, because I've always called it Kiev, and apparently that's a difference. And
that was the Russian pronunciation. It's a different dialect. So Ukrainians pronounce it Kiev. The Russians pronounce it Kiev.
Well, I think calling it the Ukraine is incorrect too, and I keep doing it out of habit.
But I said the Ukrainians, as in the people, not the country of the Ukraine.
I just said the Ukraine, but regardless, I don't know what we get from Ukraine that is so vital that they can't take over. That not that I think it's good, especially the way it was going down. Like, the video that really screwed me up was the one of the Russian fighter jet coming down, like launching a missile, and it hit a few doors down from the house that they were filming from. But these kids were screaming, and I'm like, can you imagine looking out your window and seeing a foreign fighter jet launching a missile at your neighbor's house? Holy crap! So it is not at all that I don't feel for them.
That's one of the things. You could tell that was a house they were videotaping from, because you could see a garage.
Oh, they went down the hallway. Afterwards, they turned around and went down the hall.
There's not a house that close to any strategic military building. There's no way that you had a house that close to a...
I'm not familiar with Ukrainian city design, but I wouldn't think so, no. I don't know. My point is, I hate seeing that. So it's not at all that I don't feel bad, but I don't necessarily like the U.S. being the world police. I mean, literally Team America, world police.
America.
The joke is that we interject ourselves into everything. Like, anything going on, we got to be like, oh, no. You remember the opening scene where we destroy half of Paris, and we're like, yeah, we stopped the terrorists, and like Paris is destroyed.
But look at the UN. Look at the UN. Look at NATO. Who's got the biggest military?
The U.S.
So who are they going to send in whenever they decide we need to do something about this? What country's going in? And are we going to send in freaking Syria or the UK? I mean, you've got this massive military, massive navy, massive army.
Do you know
the greatest military branch on the face of the earth?
Was it NATO, or I guess we're not in the UN, so I guess it was NATO. Was NATO the one that Trump left when he was in office and then Biden got us back into? Or was it the UN?
I thought that was the UN.
Maybe the UN.
I thought that Trump left the UN and everybody was pissed off about it.
I wish.
And I don't know if we're part of the UN again. I don't know if we're back in it.
We were never officially in it. I don't remember what president it was.
And that's kind of funny. We were never officially in it.
Cheryl would be pissed at us. It was our idea.
Yeah, it was our idea, and we were never officially part of it. I
not remember what president thought of it, and then by the time it came to fruition, the next president was like, nah.
I want to say it was Truman, and then Eisenhower said no.
I think that's right, but I'm not 100% sure. But regardless, one of the things, God, this is gonna drive me nuts too. It was either the UN or NATO. Every country was supposed to pay 2% of their GDP was basically your entry fee. So we're not making it the same amount for everybody. It's 2% of your GDP.
Yeah.
The US was like literally the only one paying that. We were doing like 3.5%. We were paying way too much. Every other country, the average was 1.5%. Like people were not paying the 2% they were supposed to pay. Some were well below that. Some were under 1%. And so that was Trump's reason. And he got raked over the coals for leaving this treaty, whether it was NATO or the UN, whatever it was, he got raked over the coals for pulling us out of this. But his reason was, he's like, for years, we've been the only country paying what we're supposed to pay, and everyone else doesn't.
And we've been paying over what we're supposed to pay.
Almost double. Now, on top of that, besides the fact that we're paying extra to make up for the people who aren't paying, in addition to that, because other people weren't paying their share of it, it was underfunded. And because it was underfunded, they're like, oh, we need help. And that goes back to, like you said, well, who are we going to get help from? Who's got the biggest military? The US. And so we have to go do it. And it's like, you're only using us because you're underfunded. Why are you underfunded? Because you guys aren't paying. We're paying more than we're supposed to pay because you're not paying for it. And your backup is to use us. And that was basically like, we're going to stop paying for this. And you're using us as backup anyway.
I'm going to whisper this just so that it's not too loud. Nobody hears it. Okay. We did this specifically so that we could control everything. That we led everything. And we decided who we went after. That's why.
Yeah, probably. I don't doubt that at all. There's no world order, bro.
It was just so that we could go, look at how big my stick is, and wave it in everybody's face, and we could do what we wanted without anybody else saying anything. And Trump went, nope. Which was actually kind of ironic because all he wanted to do was wave around his big stick and be like, come at me.
I don't know. I really think a lot of things got misrepresented. So like I said, all the news story was Trump pulled us out of this treaty. Like he took us out of this thing that we've been in for years, and it's a good thing. Why did he pull us out of it? Because you're using us as a backup anyway, because we're paying double what we're supposed to, and nobody else is paying what they're supposed to.
And we're the one giving all the sacrifice.
Right. And then, like I said, because it's underfunded, when you need help, you come to us anyway. So why, if you're going to use us as your backup, why are we spending 3% of our GDP on being part of it anyway? Kind of like the UN. We're not officially in the UN, but we help the UN. So it's like, why do we need to be in it then? I just think a lot of stuff got misrepresented. And some of these treaties, I really like the whole NATO thing. I like the spirit of it. I mean, I get it. It's like strength through unity kind of thing. But if we get pulled into World War III because of Poland or somebody else, it's going to be like, man.
I got to be careful when I say this because I don't want to say it and then the exact opposite happen. NATO may possibly be our best chance at ever seeing world peace. What I mean by that, with NATO, you've got all these nations peacefully agreeing this is what we're going to do.
Sure.
And then look at everybody that we're having issues with aren't part of NATO or the UN. They're just off by themselves.
I agree in the sense that even the countries that aren't in NATO are scared enough of NATO to not mess with any of them.
But since the formation of NATO and the UN, name 2 NATO countries or 2 UN countries that have gone after each other.
None. I get it.
It's the closest thing we're ever going to achieve world peace with.
Or to a one world government. There's pros and cons. I don't know.
The New World Order.
Yeah.
Isn't that Australia that's going for that right now?
Oh, yeah. That was a creepy video, too. Almost as creepy as Nancy Pelosi talking about burn pits. If you haven't seen it, you got to look it up. But
sorry.
Anyway, I don't know. She's been gone for a while now. Yeah,
She has.
we got way off topic and then back on topic.
We've got about 45 minutes since she left. All right, comments. Any topics you want to see us hit?
I said they're just really bad aim, too much vodka.
Too much
They used to
vodka.
about Russians.
Da.
I know a place. Yeah.
All right, we've got one viewer. It's probably Ty.
Maybe.
Everybody else just fucking abandoned ship. I think they saw us crack the other beers when they're getting
Oh,
fucked.
this is falling apart. See ya. We go from having a
Ty, comment right now. Are you the only viewer we've got? If you're not,
or whoever's watching. We want to know who you are. The one last live viewer.
The one last live viewer.
The
I would laugh if it goes to 0 right now.
they're like,
Like,
nope.
no. I'm out. Oh,
Keegan, true fan.
Keegan.
You're right.
What's he say?
He says true fan here.
True fan.
My boy.
Hey, we well, I don't know. You might have had Keegan on here since the last time I was on, but we need to do another one that's strictly about those things.
Yeah. It's live. Does that matter?
And that's why I said those things.
Gang
not-
shit.
Gang.
I'll put it back up on. I wasn't trying to get rid of it real quick. I just read it. It's like gang shit. Real quick, the night that the invasion was happening, like we're in here, it was morning over there. And
Yeah.
I was getting ready for bed here, and I watching the news like they were invading and stuff, and I was like, depending on our reaction to this, and like I said, I think the odds of this happening have gone way, way down. But the night it was happening, I'm like, if we get involved, or if we had some plan, because we knew it was coming, like we saw them building up along the border and stuff. It was anticipated. Like
They've also been building up along the border for like the last 10 years.
Have you seen what they did in the last few months though? They showed land.
I know that there was a guy, he was a Ukrainian citizen. His house was here. And Russia put up a fence here while he was in town, and he came home and couldn't get to his house.
So the night this was all happening, I'm like, if we had something like already, here's the plan. If they do that, you know, like if they invade, we're doing this. Man, that night I went to bed and I was like, do you realize if shit just hits the fan? Like if we respond by doing something and missiles start flying, I'm like, if they did you see the map of like where nukes would probably go? Did you ever see that?
No.
They had some map and it showed all these plot points. It was a map of the US and it had a 2000 plot map and a 500 plot map. The 2000 was if Russia, for example, if they strike first. Because that's the thing. They're not going to launch one nuke.
Okay. What does 2000 versus 500 mean?
If they shoot first, they're going to shoot 2,000 of them.
If we shoot first, they're only going to shoot 500.
If we shoot first, we're going to target their nuclear launch sites. So it's going to diminish their ability to launch them.
They're only going to have 500 to shoot.
Because we're going to purposely hit their other 1,500. So it showed this map and it was like they're 2,000 and they're 500. Even the 500, I'm like, 500 is a lot of nukes. And so it showed the map like of it had to do with population, strategic, like you could read about why they had this map.
St. Louis aren't like Missouri, like this quadrant of Missouri.
There was a good amount of them around us.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like even the 500.
Yeah, you know why?
The mapping agency
Defense
and stuff like
mapping and freaking Arnold that used to be and still uses buildings downtown.
And just population. So
I mean, our population's not that high.
If you have 500 and you're just trying to hit random spots, it's a pretty good spot to drop one.
Yeah.
So we're in the top 500 populated cities.
You're correct on that.
So that night I was going to bed and I was like, that night, man, it sounds better when it's just my mic. So that night I was going to bed and I was like, man, I'm like, just say a nuke hit somewhere downtown. I'm not waking up. It's not like an earthquake first where you're like, oh, what's going on? I'm like, your house would just be obliterated. So going to bed that night, I was like, I really hope shit doesn't pop off overnight because I don't know if you wake up.
Yeah.
It was scary. But like I said, I think the odds of that happening has gone so far down. I mean, like if it happened at this point, I think it would only be because Putin was so embarrassed. He's like she said, if I'm going down, everyone's going down with me. And I don't think he'd do that.
I don't think he's got. I said it before. I don't think he's got the fucking balls to do it.
I don't think that's a problem. I think he's got too much brains to do it. That's stupid to do.
Yeah.
If you
Too
nuke,
much brains is the exact same as not enough balls. Not enough balls means
you're too stupid.
you're too stupid to realize this is a dumb idea. Enough brain, there's like too stupid or enough balls, too smart. And right there, you got this small little fucking mass of I've got enough brains to know this is stupid, but I've got enough balls to go, it just might work.
So Trump. I'm just kidding. I'm just pissing you off. So, but yeah, that is a good thing about the UN is because some of those other countries have nukes too. You launch even 500 nukes at the US, you're not going to be a country tomorrow.
No,
So-
probably not.
But you always hear about all those sites like supposedly the Denver airport, like the nuke proof shelter underneath it or whatever.
Never heard of that. I've heard about it. Yeah.
We need to do a whole other episode.
I have heard about the cryptic name drop, the cryptic signs that they've got everywhere, and the art.
Oh, it's creepy.
It's
I've been
creepy,
through there
yeah.
a few times.
I've been through there once, and I was like, I never want to come back to Denver.
Nope. It's uncomfortable.
The one that's got me, and I really can't remember what it's called. I want to say it's the Atlas Stones.
That sounds like something.
I know an Atlas Stone is a big
Right.
concrete circle. It's
It's not the one with the Masons or something?
It's something in Georgia. It's 4 pillars that are lined up like this. So there, and it's 8 different languages. Yeah, 8 different languages written the plan for the New World Order. And in that script, it says a population of 100,000. And we're in a world that just hit 750 billion.
It's a lot of people you gotta wipe out.
And that one kind of scares me. Now we're diving into the
Yeah, like I said,
conspiracy theory.
we're on
side.
another podcast here. We gotta.
But when you look at that and you see it, that's up there, and then you see what's going on, you're like, are they gearing up for something that we don't know? I mean, I've always thought that those were BS, but I'm starting to wonder.
Dude, we're gonna talk off air. I got a book for you. Do you read?
I don't know how to read.
I have a
I vote for Trump. I don't know how to read.
what a prick. I have a hard time reading books, not because I can't read. The thing is when I get into a book, I get really, really into a book. I was reading one time. God, I think it was 7th grade. I was reading. You've probably heard of the book Left Behind. Basically, the rapture happens.
Yes.
I was
They
reading.
made a movie about it.
Yeah,
I watched the movie.
twice. I was reading that book. It was 7th grade. I was reading that book, and I was to the point where like everyone had just disappeared, or a lot of people had just disappeared, and like cars were crashing, everything was going crazy, phone lines were crazy. And I think I was in my 7th period class. I remember it was English, and like we had one of those like do what you need to do type classes. And so I was just reading my book, and I'm sitting there reading, and the teacher said something like, I need to call so-and-so or something. And I straight up told the teacher, I'm like, good luck. Because I was thinking like the phone lines were tied up and stuff. I was reading, and I was so into the book. Just when I heard they needed to make a phone call, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen because the phone lines are tied up.
Jesus.
But it was just in the book. I forgot it was like, oh, that's not real. So I told the teacher good luck, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, I don't know.
I'm just buried in this fucking novel.
But I have a really hard time getting into a book. But there's a book that's kind of about
And the name of the book,
Agenda 21. What?
What year
Did-
just ended?
Huh?
What year just ended?
21. Ooh.
Oh,
What if it's called that for a reason?
Yeah.
Now, you can read. It's not just a book. There is a thing called Agenda 21. Look it up. But
It's like a catch-22.
That's this year. It's a freaky book, though. Check it out, or just research it. Look it up. I don't know if it's real, but it's kind of into the world type
Oh, Jesus.
crazy shit.
Yeah, you're going to have to. Do you have a copy of it still?
Yeah, it might be down there. I got it somewhere. We'll look it up off air. Anyway, end of the world. It's on purpose. They're going to nuke us. We're going to nuke them. It's all part of the plan. My point was with all these nuclear shelters, though, like supposedly under the Denver airport and stuff, that's always been, they're like, we'll move the president here in case of a nuclear attack. I'm like, you're going to get from Washington, D.C. to Colorado before a nuke lands? I understand having it, but I'm like, and they have a few of them.
You're underestimating the speed of Air Force One. Because
Maybe
you got to remember, Air Force One isn't just that plane that says United States of America.
it's any plane. I know that.
It's any plane he's on. If they put him on an SR-71 Blackbird, he's going to get to Denver 30 minutes.
Something we should look up is how long it would take from the time we detect that a missile's on the way. How long would it take to hit? Because that's a lot longer than people think, but it's still.
Oh, we got 2 viewers now. Keegan, look it up.
Oh, I can look it up.
Oh, wait. Keegan just commented.
Oh, that was old. He said game shit.
Oh, I thought it just moved. Not bad.
Flight time on an intercontinental ballistic missile is 30 to 40 minutes. That's what I'm saying. They're not getting from Washington, D.C. to Colorado and then underground in 40
you're not
minutes.
getting them loaded on an SR-71 and flown all the way over there in 10 minutes to get him into that bunker.
Now, if you happen to be in the air.
5 minutes onto the jet, 5 minutes into the bunker.
If they're smart.
And that's if it's 40 minutes. If it's 30, like, it ain't happening.
If you're smart, you do it during rush hour. You picture rush hour in Washington, D.C., and you're trying to we need to get the president underground.
I'm sure they've got ways around that. It's Washington, D.C. It's designed to protect the president. Like there's got to be. Plus, there's a bunker under the White House.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably nuke proof.
You can probably think it'd take a direct hit. Like if something hit upstairs, you think it.
That depends. Is this nuclear warhead a bunker buster?
If it's the one you're launching at the White House, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hopefully he's in some small town reading a book to children while the World Trade Center gets
Keegan
bombed.
says Biden would trip down the stairs and add another 10 minutes.
God, Jesus.
They'd have to pull him out of the bathroom. He'd be in his favorite stall. And they're like, sir, there's a nuke on the way. Like,
5 more minutes.
I pooped my pants. Come on, man.
Did you see that video?
Which one?
Biden giving a speech about God, I don't even know what the speech was about. I just know him saying, what if your kid wants to know about the neighbor or the man on the moon?
Oh, yeah.
Or if aliens exist.
Like, bro, what are you talking?
What? Because he was talking. It started with he looked over at a black guy and said, "Are you vaccinated?" And then he goes, "What if your kid wants to know if there's a man on the moon?"
No,
or. Listen, I don't think he's doing a terrible job. Entirely terrible. Let me rephrase. I don't think he's doing an entirely terrible job.
We're not all dead yet. I guess there's
we
that.
aren't. or not. But good God, some of the things that he does makes me go.
You know, like I said when I said that was my hands.
I would really go for a mean tweet and $1.30 gas right now.
You know earlier I said I'm not going to break someone over the coals for like misspeaking. Like if you screw up one word, I'm like stuff like the man on the moon and stuff.
He changed topic.
It's one of those. I'm like I need
like,
to know what you're talking about. Like when he said the Iranian people, I knew what you meant. But like you screwed up the word, but I'm not gonna like.
Yeah.
But when it's like, huh?
I really don't know. The other one that kind of got me was if you're gonna come after the U.S. government, you're gonna need nukes and a few F-13s or F-15s. And I was like, did he just threaten us?
Mm-hmm.
I was like.
So
that might have been his way of saying, look, your ARs aren't going to do anything. So even if we take full auto away from you, you don't stand a chance.
I didn't want to throw it in with Sheryl because I don't know where she's at with stuff. And I try to stay pretty neutral and just get some of the facts while she's on here. But I did find it ironic, the amount of people supporting. They're like, did you hear they're giving all the civilians fully automatic weapons to fight off the Russians? And I'm like, there's an idea.
And that might have been his whole, your fully automatic AR isn't going to do anything against a nuclear bomb or an F-15. The way he said it came across terrible.
The problem was
he actually meant, and I don't know what he actually meant, but what I assumed he actually meant was, all we're asking is that you get rid of the fucking bump fire because it doesn't matter. It's not going to stop you.
Trump already got rid of bump fire that was gone when Biden took office.
I don't know. It was an example I was throwing out.
Did you hear what he said during a State of the Union?
What?
He said something about we got to get guns under control. Why do you need a 30-round magazine? Or probably said clip. What are deer out there in Kevlar vests?
Didn't you say something earlier today about the ATF being too lenient?
I read an article that the ATF was too cozy with the gun community. Like the author of this article, you didn't research this topic. Yeah, it's because the ATF had their big criticism was the ATF had a booth at SHOT Show. I'm like, the ATF had a booth at SHOT Show so that they could tell everyone what was illegal and why. And that's pretty much it. Maybe to save some face. But they said something, they're too cozy with the gun community.
Well, and that makes sense. You have a gun show. You have an ATF booth. Hey, this man over here is selling this weapon. Can I own that, or do I need a specific license? That saves you from taking a gun purchase and turning it into a felony.
We haven't done a podcast in way too long. Did you hear what people are doing at SHOT Show this year?
No, I've never actually heard of SHOT Show.
It's like shooting, hunting, outdoor, tactical. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's a huge gun show, and it's basically where everyone in the industry announces their new products,
so
it's a
shooting,
huge
home
deal.
defense, outdoor, and tactical.
It's kind of like the Detroit Auto Show for firearms.
Okay,
everything new, everything that's coming out, here it is, and so the ATF had a booth there. Well, I guess the convention center where they have this is like pet friendly. They said the amount of people walking their dogs past the ATF booth, and they said people were like walking their dog by and they're like just to the agents the whole time. One of the guys was like, the amount of dogs I saw go back and forth across the ATF booth.
I'm guessing that's a play on
they shoot your dog.
Ruby Ridge and them shooting the dog first. And
they always shoot the dog first.
Oh God.
But yeah, no, that was 100%.
Yeah, like, Ruby Ridge, they shot the dog. The kid pulled up his shotgun to return fire, and they blasted the kid because they never identified themselves as federal agents.
I gotta find this. I never pull my phone out like during one of these.
After they killed like 3 people, then they said we're federal agents.
Yeah, someone sent me this the other day. It said Putin's kill squad surrounds a Ukrainian family in the mountains after killing a teenage boy and the family dog. The Russian soldiers then shoot a mother with a child in her arms. Just kidding. That was the FBI and ATF at Ruby Ridge. But yeah, they're too gun friendly though.
And no.
Oh, I already read that one.
I've said it. If I want to own full auto, maybe you raise my taxes to buy that full auto.
Why? That's not right.
Listen, make it more expensive.
Have you looked at the price of a full auto? It's expensive enough.
Listen.
Okay.
If you pay for it, it's going to you got to pay that. It will stop some of the crazy fucking lone shooters that they're trying to stop. If you really want that full auto and you are sound mind, you're going to pay it. If you're a fucking nut job that's about to shoot up a school, you're probably not going to save up the money to shoot up that school. You're just going to find some cheaper way to do it.
Or if you're a nut job, you're going to empty your savings account because who gives a shit? I'm about to go out in a blaze of glory.
True. I never looked at it that way.
And
right.
And the other point is the fact that it's a right. That's like saying not even paying for a specific service, but that's like in my opinion, that is like paying for a license to have social media accounts. Like once you have
as an individual,
uh-huh.
Like me personally, I represent no company. I have no ties to anything official. I want to have Facebook. Now I got to pay $25 a month to have the ability to go on it and see what my friends are up to.
Let's even take it a step back and say something that's already legal. So let's not talk about the legalization of fully automatic. Let's talk about something like a SBR or a suppressor, where it's legal if you pay a $200 tax stamp. So let's say you have to buy a social media license, $200, you can have Facebook. Another $200, you can have Twitter, but you're not paying it to Facebook because that's a private business. If they want to charge you for an account, they can. I'm saying you have to buy a government approval to have social media.
Oh, so it's like a $200 tax stamp to buy a suppressor. Then you have to buy the suppressor.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
So
it's not social media I can do without. If I really want that suppressor because I don't want to wear ear pro when I go to the range, okay. Because I want to be silent when I'm missing, when I'm trying to hit that fucking deer, okay.
So you'd be cool with paying $200 to have a First Amendment, right?
Because a suppressor only goes
right. Yeah, just like the movies. Yeah,
it doesn't.
The guy
doesn't make that sound like when you rack one back into the chamber. Right?
The guy right next to you can't hear it. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? So you're cool with paying $200 just to have a tax stamp to have social media for each social media platform? That's the other thing. It's not like you pay $200 and you can buy suppressors. You need one for each one.
Thing. You want to know what I use social media for? I have this buddy who's insane. He's a fucking wacko. He started this group called Cryptic something
with a K,
with a podcast. And yeah, that's pretty much all I use social media for. I hop on and I watch a couple of videos every now and then. Mm-hmm. And I'm in his group chats. Other than that, when's the last time I posted anything on social media?
Keegan says, give me 3-round burst and I'm cool. 3-round burst.
Listen, cool. If you can trust a drunk Lance Corporal on the range with 3-round bursts, I think that the general population's okay.
Let's meet in the middle. Yeah, 3-round burst. I don't need full auto. Just give me burst. Work with me on this exercise because the problem is, I think in general, I'm looking at the principle of the thing, and you're looking at it as like, I can live without social media. Like I'm talking about the principle. Should you have to pay the government $200 to open a Facebook account? The government, not Facebook, the government.
How about you put it in terms that's actually going to fucking matter to me? I would pay the government $200 to put a turbo V8 supercharged non-catalytic converter in my truck.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Like,
what the fuck?
You know what? You have to go get, like, you can't go no cats because you have to pass.
No, if I pay $200, I could go no cats because you're saying you have to have cats to pass safety and emissions, right?
Right. So,
Okay, to have a legal firearm, you can't have burst or full auto or a suppressor.
right.
I want to have the loudest truck with the best horsepower. I don't want cats. I'll give you $200 just so I don't have to fucking deal with that.
But should you have to do that?
I mean, if that tax stamp keeps me from getting arrested and getting tickets, yes, I agree with that.
But
It's a $200 tax stamp. It's not that big of a fucking deal. The problem that I have with it is the people that are making a big deal out of it. And the responsible gun owners that leave a shotgun on the bedroll of their truck and drive off.
Oh no.
Yo, yeah.
Careful. It happens. So it's not me. So no. Like I said, you're going back to I can and I would. And a lot of people agree they will pay $200 for a suppressor. My point is you shouldn't have to. Especially not.
Here's the thing. You're not paying a tax stamp on that pistol that you're buying. You're not paying a tax stamp on that rifle you're buying. You're paying a tax stamp on an add-on. An add-on that the ATF goes, only certain people can have this.
My problem comes in.
You're paying for the ability to have something. All that the Second Amendment says is the right to bear arms. It says nothing about having the right to have silent arms or the right to have fully automatic arms. You're paying a tax stamp to have something that the Constitution doesn't cover. I'm okay with it.
Let me back up a little bit real quick. First off, the reason I tried to use Facebook and not car parts is because the First Amendment is specifically the freedom of speech, which is, to me, a more equivalent. The Constitution doesn't say jack shit about car parts. It is my point. What I was going to say about Facebook, because people always, when they wrote the Second Amendment, they weren't talking about AR-15s. When they wrote the First Amendment, they weren't talking about Facebook and Twitter either. But the principle applies. That's why I was trying to use that as an equivalent.
But you got to look at this. Who's in Facebook jail right now?
Me.
That's why we only had 5 viewers at a max tonight.
No. It hung at 8 most of the time.
At 8?
At a time, yeah.
All I ever saw was 5. The 5 was the highest I saw.
No. It was 8 most of the time. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
But go ahead. Just continue on. This is a heated argument. Me and you have had it a couple times.
The way you're looking at it is you have the right to bear certain arms. The way that I'm looking at it is your right to have arms should not be infringed, which means limited or so to me, your right to have arms should be unlimited. A limitation is, well, no suppressors, no short barrels, none of this.
Even when I was in the military, I wasn't issued a full auto. I was issued burst.
That was strategic.
But I was not allowed to ever go burst.
That was strategic.
I was never allowed to go burst.
It wouldn't because you were too dangerous. It's about saving ammo.
What the fuck are you talking about?
And because
okay, so if they're already limiting the general military to you can fire 1 round at a time, unsuppressed, fuck does it matter? I have right now, I currently have the same rights that I had to fire my rifle that I had when I was in the service. The only difference is I can't buy the exact rifle I had while I was in the service, meaning I can't buy a 3-round burst M4.
The reason you weren't allowed to shoot burst was strategic. They didn't want a waste of ammo. You had no reason to shoot burst at the range.
Oh, yeah, because I only ever went to the range.
You know what I'm saying? That was a strategic thing. Whether or not you need it isn't the point, as far as I'm concerned. I'm one of those guys when people are like, well, you think you should be allowed to have tanks?
Look,
100%. I think you should be allowed to have tanks.
For your fucking trigger that goes bang, 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 bang. I love that.
That's
sick.
Sick.
Fucking cool. And I think that that's better than full auto.
You know what? I
Because
actually agree.
What happens? You got a full auto fucking rifle and you pull the trigger and it starts to run away from you and you grip it tighter and you just run the fucking clip empty or the magazine empty.
If you're stupid, yeah.
And what's the majority of fucking people out there?
Stupid.
I'm not saying that all gun owners are stupid, but there are some stupid fucking gun owners.
Oh, 100%. We were at the range.
Missouri. Oh, yeah.
I'm not
When
agreeing
we were
with
at
you,
the
but
range, when that guy threw a mag in, racked it back, and then turned and goes, am I even hitting the target? Pointing his rifle right at me, you and your brother.
I'm talking about when his gun jammed and he's banging on it. Well, it's pointed at the whole line of people. I'm not saying there aren't stupid people, but my question is he responsible for every round that comes out of his
Yes.
rifle? Okay. So if you're stupid enough to hold the trigger and let it go crazy, you're responsible for what those rounds hit.
How are you going to prove whose gun they came out of? Because
do you know the shows I've been watching?
Hang on, because technically within the Second Amendment, you don't have to hand in your rifle for examination to find out what round got fired out of it. You do not have to
probable cause.
You don't have to hand over your rifle. That's in the friggin' Second Amendment. That's under shall not be infringed. They can't take your gun, right?
If they have probable cause.
Where does it say if they have probable cause?
It's literally the whole.
Where does it say it?
It doesn't say it in the specific amendment.
So if
that's our legal system.
So if it doesn't, but that's being infringed upon. If they've got probable cause, now you're being infringed because they're taking your gun. That's the problem with the Missouri gun law right now.
I'm so lost.
Is because
what you're equivalent that to is if you watch someone shoot someone and like, I don't have to give you my gun, but we saw you do it. I mean, it's not unlimited. It doesn't mean you can do whatever you want with a gun and no one can ever do anything to you.
I'm not equivalating it to that.
I'm just lost.
Say, okay, me and you are driving in your truck.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 3 felonies, and you're my getaway driver after I killed a convenience store owner. Here's how the Missouri law is written. I took my pistol, pop, stole the money out of his register, set it on the center console in your truck. We're driving along, you get pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
And the cop pulls us over and sees the gun sitting on the center console.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? He's going to say, whose gun is that? He's going to ask for both IDs. You say it's your gun. You've got no criminal record.
Okay.
Takes both IDs, sees you're clean. I've got a felony. He can't touch that gun because you said it was yours.
Okay.
Okay? If he takes that gun with the Missouri law, the way that it's written right now, he can take that gun, seize it, find out that it was just used in that crime, and he violated your Second Amendment rights, and now you can turn around and sue him and the city each for $50,000 a piece. That's $100,000 in your pocket. So guess what the cops are doing? They're not fucking doing it. They're not risking that fucking liability.
You talking about after you just hung out the window and shot people?
I'm not saying I hung out the window.
I
used you as a getaway driver.
Okay.
And that gun that was used in that crime is sitting there. He can't touch that gun. If he does, you can sue him. Yes. That's how the fucking law is written.
I think Keegan worded this. I think Keegan worded this better than I could. He said, "This is not how it works. I promise." You're talking about.
I've had a few too many of these. Leave me the fuck alone.
That is the case if it's just a random stop. If you just stop me. If they are stopping me because that is the vehicle that was seen leaving a shooting.
I didn't say that was the vehicle seen leaving the shooting. I just said, I did not say he stopped you because that vehicle was seen leaving.
Okay.
We're driving along. That gun's sitting there.
Okay.
And we get pulled a week later.
Okay.
Just so that We throw that out the window.
Okay.
A week later, I'm riding in your truck, and I go, fuck, I hate sitting on this, and I set it on the fucking center console.
Okay.
We get pulled over.
Yeah.
You know I'm a felon, and I'm not supposed to have that.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, you're not who you are right now.
Right.
And you go, it's mine.
Right.
Cop asks, whose gun is that?
Sure.
If you say it's yours,
Uh-huh.
and he still takes it,
Yes.
okay, now you're liable for whatever crime I committed with it.
No.
Well, unless you can prove that it was my gun. Okay?
Okay.
But him taking that gun and checking, running everything on it, finding out, running it through the ATF, finding out if that gun was fucking run and used in any crimes,
okay.
he opens himself and the city up to a $50,000 fine each. Himself and the city, 2 separate counts.
Okay.
So cops are backing away from search and seizure, which is also in the freaking the Bill of Rights.
A separate amendment, but yes.
It's a separate amendment, but they're backing away from that within Missouri because of the way that this new law is written, because it gives no... the way that it's written, it's unclear. In some of the lines, it reads that this doesn't impose any of that, and then in other lines, it says that it does. By that, the way that it's written, it says that you can't go through any federal agencies to do a background check on the weapon. Okay? The only way to do a background check is to go through the ATF and the FBI. So they can't check the history of that weapon without going through these federal agencies. And once they go through those federal agencies, if it comes back clear and you decide to sue, you're wrong. If they come back and it was used in a crime, you're in trouble. But you can still sue them because they violated your right. That's the problem with the way the law is written. It needs to be cleared up a little bit.
Okay. I'm trying really hard to hang in there. I'll put it this way. If they have no idea that I was your getaway driver and I'm stopped for an unrelated reason and I claim that a weapon is mine when it's really yours that you used in a crime, and they take it without having any knowledge of the crime that was used or committed with that weapon, yes, I have a problem with that. They have no reason to take it from me. I know you're saying that there's a problem,
that's where the lawsuit comes in. But the fact that it was used in a crime, you still can sue them for that 50 grand because they had no probable cause to take it.
Like I said,
that's a loophole that's in that law. It's where it's fucked up. And it's not necessarily within St. Louis or Kansas City or the biggest jurisdictions.
Sure.
It's the smaller jurisdictions that don't have the fucking budget to pay $100 grand after that shit happens.
I will stick to my guns that if they have no knowledge of the crime committed with that gun and they just stop me and are like, let me see it. Yes, I have a problem with that. For the same reason that say there was no crime. If they're not aware of that crime, it's a non-factor. If I am just pulled over, for example, every time I'm pulled over, I will tell them when they ask, I stop, hands on the wheel. They're like, your license and registration. I pulled you over for this. Before I grab it, I tell them. And I actually have learned the way that I say this. I kind of have a routine. I get pulled over enough that it's a routine.
Yeah, that's good.
I want to let you know for your safety and for mine that I have a valid concealed carry permit and I have a weapon holstered on my right hip, in my glove box, whatever it is.
Carry.
But that's what I tell them, because that is the best way for me to avoid it sounding like I got a gun. I let them know I have that. And even though I don't need it anymore, I keep one active. And for that same reason, I keep a current one, just again, to avoid confusion. And I think it covers your ass legally. You've gone through the courses. I still advise people, even though you don't need a concealed carry permit in Missouri, I recommend you to have one. But that's the way I say it. If I tell them that and they say, well, let me see it. Let me run a background check on that gun. I have a problem with that. No. Why? I have done nothing wrong. So if they stop me, even if that gun was used in a crime, but they have no knowledge of that, that's a problem. In that case, they might get lucky and find out a crime was committed with that one. But look at it from a majority of the time, I have done nothing with it. Yes,
Well,
I have a
the
problem
thing
just
is,
handing it over to you for no reason.
The thing is, the way it's written is any time it's taken away. It doesn't matter if it was used in a crime. If it was used in a crime, you shouldn't be open for that lawsuit. If it wasn't used in a crime, okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll put it this way. If they violate your right by saying, let me see it, and they happen to be right, not because you're a person of interest or this vehicle fits a description of one seen fleeing the scene or anything like that, if it's just completely random and they violate your right and take it, that's a super gray area. And I know that that's your point, but I'm saying the odds of that happening seem so infinitely low.
Okay. Go downtown. Look at what's happening downtown. You got all these fucking gangbangers running around with guns in their fucking cars, shooting up fucking blocks. There's rounds getting thrown around all over the place. And the cops can't do anything about it because even if they're right and the guns in the car are fucking
They're right about what?
Crime,
they're right about I stopped you for a speeding violation and I just have a hunch that you committed a crime? If they stop you because your vehicle or you fit a description, then that is a legal seizure, the same as it is taking your phone or any, again, the First Amendment, any of them. Like you said, that what was it? I think it's the Fifth Amendment, the right to personal property.
A cop's not going to take your gun on a hunch.
That's my point. You shouldn't take a gun on a hunch. That's exactly my point. If you're taking it, you should have probable cause.
Okay, he's going to run your plates. He's going to check everybody's ID in the car. And if there is somebody that's already done something illegal, like a violent crime, that's more than a hunch. All right, I got to check these. Especially if the driver is gang related or somebody in the car is gang related. That taking that gun is more than a hunch at that point to check it against previous crimes. Once they do that, that guy, whoever they charge with possession of that gun.
But you're changing it now to nobody should have had the gun in the first place. Maybe I misunderstood something.
I said driver. I screwed up. I
meant
passenger in the vehicle, not necessarily the driver. Somebody in the vehicle isn't a criminal. Everybody else has a criminal record.
Okay. So you're saying if there's a gun set between two people and one's a criminal and one's not, they should be able to check it.
They should be able to check it without the liability of a lawsuit. If it comes back that it's clean, hey, sorry about wasting your time. Here's your weapon back.
I guess that's not the hill I'm going to die on. If there's two guys in a car and a gun in the glove box and one's a felon who's not supposed to have a gun and the driver is allowed to have one.
But the thing is, you don't have to have proof in Missouri that it's your gun. So it's not your gun. You say it's your gun just because you know if you don't, and because it's the other guy's gun, he's going to go back to fucking jail because he's on parole or whatever, or he's a felon and he's not supposed to own one.
The risk of that is, and here's the problem, is if your hypothetical scenario happens. But meanwhile, they're investigating the shooting that I drove you away from. If at any point they're on to you and find out that I was your getaway driver, then that gun becomes evidence. They can look at it. If they find out it was the other guys and I lied for you, that's a whole mess of crimes. You're a getaway driver. It's conspiracy to commit crime, like all this stuff. You're an accessory to murder.
You just changed the fucking thing, though.
How?
Because you took it from the lawsuit of taking that gun to check it to, well, then they're going to find out that I'm a criminal now too because I just lied for you.
I'll put it this way. If it's not my gun, if it is your gun, so again, you murder someone in a gas station, come out, I'm your getaway driver. We get stopped for a speeding ticket. They're like, let me check that gun. In the event that it was your gun and you committed a crime and I was your getaway driver, I guarantee you I'm not able to sue anybody for taking my gun. That wasn't really my gun, and I was helping you commit a crime. There's no way. No way
That's
somebody.
how it's written.
I
Because that's the thing. In Missouri, you don't have to what's he saying? In Missouri, you don't have to register your guns.
in most states you don't have to,
Okay.
which I agree with.
So there has no proof that that is or isn't your gun. It's just when you claim that it is, it's your gun.
Okay, so I provided a murderer with a murder weapon. At that point, whose gun it is seems like a pretty minor factor in the fact
But
that I
the
was your
fact
getaway
is-
driver.
The fact is,
Hang
if
on.
they pin it on you, or they pin it on him, they pin it on you, or you claim it's your gun,
Mm-hmm.
but then they pin it on him because he's the criminal, and then they pin you as an accomplice.
Mm-hmm.
You and the criminal both are open to, well, this was illegally seized, and you can both sue the city for 50 fucking grand. And the cop, 100 grand each.
It says when
That's
you get pulled over with a
$200,000.
firearm, cops have all the rights to check out the firearms, and I have never heard of a cop being sued over that. I'm not sure that's true. Because I've seen people basically, if you're stopped and you're a completely legal citizen and you're stopped for no reason, it may be different if you're speeding and they stop you for a reason. The stories I've seen is where guys are trolling, and I think it's stupid. I don't like the people who just walk down the street with an AR-15 just to trigger cops, and when they stop them, say, let me see it, and it's like I'm being stopped for no reason.
And the only mutual friend that we have that can verify this, I asked him point blank. I said, hey, have you noticed anything about this? He goes, personally, no, but I do know cops that have. So he's not even a reliable source because he hasn't encountered it.
He explained it to me, and it was different than your understanding of it. He basically said the ATF and the government cannot force local entities to do things. It does not mean that they can't use federal, like if St. Louis County is investigating something, they still have access to use the ATF to help figure something out. It doesn't, the ATF just can't force a local government to help them. They can. And he said most of the time what they do is they'll deputize somebody in the department. So if the ATF is trying to figure something out locally, they'll deputize a St. Louis County police officer to the ATF to help them out. So it turns out it's a non-factor. It doesn't do much. All it does is keep the ATF from saying, it's very similar to what Colorado has done with weed, where it's like, okay, it's legal. It's still against government or federal law, but Colorado is basically like, yeah, we're not going to enforce that.
See, and everything that I've read up on it is law enforcement agents saying that they can't run them through the federal database to firing around and then checking the markings, like how they do in forensics and all that. Even doing that, to run that through the federal database to see if any gun matching the markings of that round fired is illegal. And they're opening themselves up to that lawsuit. That they can't seize the gun. They can't do anything. They can't do anything. They can't use any federal resources. And
that's the part he says is not true.
Read. Now, here's the problem. My source that I'm reading, the sources that I've read, the sources that he's used, and the sources that you've read, they're all different. Which one's right? And my understanding of the law, because I've written the whole fucking law, read the entire law, written.
I was like, damn, that's kinky.
I've read the entire
I
law.
wrote that law, so
Yeah. I've read the entire law, the entire bill that was passed. To me, with what I read, and maybe it's just because the way what I read influenced the way that I read when I reread the law. Maybe that's
probably
what it did. You know, so maybe that's where my disconnect from where you're at is. But to me,
the way he told me is local
the
enforcement.
SAPA Act to me seems fucking stupid.
The way he told me is local law enforcement still has access to federal databases, federal assistance, if they decide they want it. What that law does is prevent federal agencies from forcing local agencies to comply with them.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if St. Louis County is investigating something, they still have all the same resources they always have, whether it's the FBI, the ATF, all these federal agencies, they can still use that to solve a crime. What they cannot do is, like in the instance of a Ruby Ridge or Waco, Texas, where those were actually the ATF themselves, but the ATF cannot come in and say, hey, St. Louis County, we're researching this, you're going to come help us. Because in other states, if the ATF says, hey, local law enforcement, we want your help.
That's not the way that I read it. So if that's truly what it means, that needs to be more clearly written in that law.
Basically, my understanding. So if the ATF still wants to go do it, they still can. That's a federal law enforcement. They can enforce federal laws. They cannot force local law enforcement to help them if they don't want to. And in addition to that, I thought that was on my foot. Yeah, the local law enforcement still has access to all those things. Just like I said, weed in Colorado. Colorado says our local cops, if they see you smoking weed, they're going to go, because we don't care. If the DEA comes in and decides like, hey, you're not doing this, it's still a federal law that you can't smoke weed. So if a DEA agent decides to come in, you're kind of shit out of luck. But the DEA can't say, hey, Colorado State Police, enforce these weed laws. Like, no. That's basically the same thing.
Okay.
That's a closest equivalent I can think. Now, when you say you read this and you're understanding, I know what you mean, like because you're thinking of it this way, that's how you read it. I also read today that the ATF was too gun friendly. So there's a lot of very skewed.
Like I said, and I checked 3 different sources before I formed my opinion. It wasn't one of those where I just checked one source and went, oh, this is what I think. Like the anti-vax moms. I checked a few different sources. And I went, okay, so there's some validity here.
Sure.
Now that I'm hearing it from you, maybe I need to do more research.
Not
you
have to read the whole law again.
I came into this with the impression that you never looked into it.
When you first asked me about it, I hadn't. I knew the general idea.
Okay.
And
so a few months ago when we first talked about it, you hadn't looked.
I have looked into it since.
Okay.
And that's what I found out. Now, on the same flip side, when that act was first introduced, I remember me and one of my coworkers were like, does that mean no federal laws apply to us? Like we can just have tax-free suppressors, fully automatics, that kind of stuff. Those are still barred by Missouri. Like they basically still say some of these things we're not going to allow.
Yeah.
Like they choose to follow some of them. So no, I can't just go slap a suppressor and a full auto lower onto my stuff. And I'm in Missouri. That's not the case. You still can't do that.
Well, I'm not done with this conversation. I really got to piss.
I'm going solo.
I'm not going to make it.
If you're watching, comment now because I'm not used to doing this solo here. I'm not an expert on this law. I don't know exactly what he's talking about, but I'm pretty sure some of that is misunderstanding big time. I was unprepared. We're a long way off from Ukraine. I think we've doubled the time since she left too. Hey. What up? Time is it? This is the most awkward dead air moment, I think, in this podcast so far. Not the most awkward moment, but as far as Keegan says, I'm still lost on how to get away hypothetical story. Me too, man. That makes 2 of us. I don't know what. I'm not sure how tolerant he is to alcohol because I'm lost. I don't know where that was going. I'm pretty sure you can't have murder weapons and sue somebody for taking murder weapons. I know. Me too. She's lost too. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that meant.
Oh, thank God.
This was super awkward and weird.
What?
I'm just trying to find stuff to talk about. But basically I said, I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can't sue the police department for taking a murder weapon. Like, I know there was a lot of layers to that and a lot of hypothetical situations.
It's not taking it. It's how they see.
I understand.
That's what I was reading.
I'll put it this way.
What I think we need to do is we need to find a lawyer and have a lawyer on the podcast with us.
I'd be down.
Better explain the way that it's written and explain to us what it actually means, because our sources are vastly different from one another's.
And neither of them are very good. But I'll put it this way. To me, the closest equivalent I can think of. I'm trying to think of a crime you can do like with your phone.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and pause.
Real quick. We don't have to dive into it. I just want to give what I was picturing a hypothetical situation there. Let's say that, I don't want to say me. Let's say you have some inappropriate underage material on your phone.
Wow.
I know you don't. Let's say you did.
Like, holy shit.
If somebody's investigating you, the FBI finds out you have this somehow, whether it's someone undercover or whatever, and they take your phone, they're right to do that. If you get pulled over and a cop just says, hey, let me see your phone, and they go through your phone and find stuff on it, I have a problem with them having taken your phone. And yes, that would be thrown out in court. I forget what the word is for it, but it's basically they didn't have a right.
Cause.
Yeah, but there's something. It's not when you obtain. Basically, they can't use that as evidence. They can't use your phone as evidence because it was illegally seized. I think it's the same thing. Yes. Did they catch someone who was potentially doing something wrong? Yes, but they did it the wrong way. You can't just check everybody's phone all the time. I guess that was my thing. If you have no reason to suspect me of a crime, you can't just take my shit and check. And in your case, yeah, you would have caught a murderer, and then the same thing, you would have checked that. But at the same time, if you don't have anything on your phone, are you just kind of like, here's my phone, look through it, make sure I have nothing on there? No, you have no reason to check my phone. That's my equivalent. I thought of it while you were gone.
See, and like I said, we need to have a lawyer in here.
That'd be sick.
For now, we'll agree to disagree, but the only lawyer that's coming to my head fits both topics that were discussed here. He was a he was a lawyer and then became a high school teacher.
When you said both topics, I thought you meant this in Ukraine, which is what this, but then I realized what you meant. I don't think he'd be down. Uh-oh. Get out of here, beast. Get out of here. Oh, no. Then I realized which other topic you meant. He doesn't need the content. He's out there acting on it. Oh, my God. I couldn't have him on. No way.
Hey.
Get out. Not in my house. Not remotely. Nope.
You know, she was 17, right? Within Missouri, that's the legal age of consent.
Whatever you got to tell yourself.
His.
Because it was. Never mind. I'm not going to even say his profession. I know who you're talking about, though.
I already said his profession before. Both professions that we knew him with. I know his current profession.
Inmate 742?
No, he's not in jail.
Really?
No.
Just fired? I guess
he just got fired and he was acquitted of all charges. But he can never teach again and he can never practice law again.
That's fair.
Currently, he is a gambler at the horse track.
Oh, my God. I don't think I could do it. I know it's technically 17 here, but that's creepy. Especially under those circumstances.
I ran into him at said horse track.
Oh, no.
Me and he friended me on Facebook. I never deleted him. I accepted it. I was like, hey, he didn't do this to me. So yeah, I kind of know what he's up to. But God, I don't know. The way that whole thing played out was kind of fishy anyway. The whole time I heard it, because did you ever have him as an actual teacher?
No.
Okay. When I had him as a teacher, he told us the reason he quit practicing law and became a teacher was so that he could reach kids before they got into the system and stop them from going down the wrong path. So I kind of went into the whole him getting busted for that as there ain't no way he did that.
You're not the first person I've heard say that.
I'm not saying that he didn't.
We've done that up.
I have a real hard time believing the story that this young lady told about him.
Unless he just decided it was worth it.
Now,
maybe he just said, damn.
I heard from another friend of mine that this young lady, her mom ran a cleaning business.
Okay.
And instead of sending somebody that was of age or going herself, she sent her daughter to clean said teacher's townhouse.
I don't think we had said what his job was yet. You thought we did. I didn't know we did.
I had said it multiple. Keegan, you're still watching. How many times have I said teacher?
You said lawyer. I don't know.
And teacher multiple times.
This is a hypothetical. I mean, I think it's creepy and I don't want to talk to him.
That's why I'm not name dropping. But
why is he barred from law though? I understand
he's not
teaching.
Barred from law.
Oh, he just quit?
But no law firm will hire him.
Okay.
Even
okay.
his dad's law firm won't hire
Okay. I can see that. I thought when you said he done, I thought he was like banned, and I'm like, if it's legal,
yeah, he was never
definitely
disbarred.
creepy, but
He was never disbarred, but he was banned from teaching, and they tried to disbar him because he used a position of power.
Yeah, that's a factor too. I know, like in college, it's a bigger deal because college, like everyone's of age, but
it wasn't statutory that he was charged with. It wasn't statutory.
Just normal.
It was just, yeah.
Okay.
Well, not that it's normal.
No. But that word without the word statutory in front of it, that is a game changer.
And there were pictures and text found on the plaintiff on her phone that showed that it wasn't just him. That's why he was acquitted.
Other people in the same profession?
Huh? No.
Oh, just of the same age?
No. That he wasn't the only one interested in the situation. There were texts leading up to the incident in question that showed she may have been.
Okay. Okay. When you said wasn't the only one, I thought you meant like, I'm like.
Plaintiff is the victim, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That she.
In most cases.
Yeah. That he wasn't the only one that was interested in.
There was mutual interest.
Relationship that ensued.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Dangerous ground.
It was the plaintiff's mother.
I think
found the text and filed the charges. The plaintiff lied under oath.
Maybe we just find a Second Amendment lawyer.
How about that?
I was like, this whole Second Amendment argument is already way off topic from the podcast, but this is really off topic.
But I do think we need to find a lawyer to better explain that.
Yeah,
it needs to be a middle of the road, not left, not right, as close to the middle of the road as we can possibly find, because right's going to read it one way, left is going to read it the other. We need to find somebody right down the middle, somebody that owns guns but votes Democrat.
Yeah. Most lawyers, though, even if they have a personal bias, they're going to explain what the law is. Like, they have to know what the law is. They may have a preference, but they're going to know what the law is. Kind of like tonight, for example, like Sheryl tonight. Like I said, I tried to be pretty soft about it. There were some people who had opinions either pro-Ukraine, not necessarily pro-Russia, but questioning what was going on. And I said, I'm like, I really don't want to take a side. She knows facts. I want to know facts. let's get those. That's kind of like with a lawyer. They may have a personal opinion, but because you're never going to have someone with no opinion.
We're running on 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
By the way, everybody else is in bed.
Yeah.
You need to go to sleep.
That happened. Nah. I've been up till like 3 or 4, dude.
I mean, I'm looking at what time it is.
I mean,
like,
that's not a school night, but I mean, you can do what you need to do. But
is it a school night?
no.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I couldn't even remember.
Yeah, you have.
It sucks. It sucks.
Want to go sledding?
Never again. I found a clip the other day. We're so far off topic.
I have an old truck hood at my house. Take your truck,
Ooh.
find a mud pit, and you stand on the hood. I'll drive your truck.
He's standing on shit. I found so the other day I was texting my dad, and I said something. People keep telling me, and you know what? I told him, okay, what people keep telling me, they're like, dude, you're never going to be the same. I'm like, gee, thanks. Because right now it's like, it sucks. But what do you think my primary concern is am I going to be okay? Like down the road, like that's the number one thing on my mind lately is like, am I going to be able to do stuff again and all this? When people come in and they're like, dude, your life is every day that's going to hurt. Every time it gets cold, that's going to suck. I'm like,
did I say that to you?
Thanks. No, you didn't. But people have. And I'm like,
I've been trying to stay pretty positive.
Yeah, I'm like,
about it.
I'm like, damn, thanks. That
Other than
really
saying
boosts
you
my
look
morale.
chubby in that Unsuppressed
Mm-hmm.
t-shirt.
Fuck you.
But
So
that's just because I want you to go to the gym with me.
I told you I would. But anyway, so yeah, people keep like, oh man, it's never gonna be so you're not gonna be normal ever again. I'm like, thanks. So I told my dad this the other day. I'm like, I really wish people would stop saying that. So I said, I'm like, I'm gonna start going to funerals. And like, well, I mean, not like just seeking them out, but every time I'm at
You're gonna find the guys
Yeah.
that told you you'll never be the same.
I'm gonna
And
be
at
like-
a funeral for their loved one, you're gonna be like,
not just
sorry about your wife. You know you're never gonna find love again, right?
That's exactly what I said. I'm like, hey, I know this is a real hard time, but that hole in your heart, you're never gonna fill it. It's gonna hurt every day. Like that's what, thanks, you assholes. Like, I don't know if it's just because it's not something everyone can relate to, but I'm like, why the fuck would you say that to somebody? Like,
Oh, I just give you shit.
I know, no,
Like,
I know, but people are.
who goes snowboarding on a sled?
It's stupid. So anyway, so I was telling him, I'm like, yeah, I'm really getting sick of people saying that. And my dad was like, he's like, don't listen, you'll be fine. And what did he say? He's like you may not be like snowboarding again, but you'll be okay. And I found a clip from The Office. And it was just the general idea. The example was snowboarding, but it's an episode of The Office. The gist, real quick, was Michael, the boss, was dating this lady who was a few years, like 8-9 years older than him. She was like 58, and he's like
Wait,
late
was that-
40s.
Was that
Pam's mom?
Pam's mom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this when he's dating her, and he's like, he's like, well, you want to go skydiving or stuff like this? And she's like, oh no. And so it's his interview. He's like, do I really want to go snowboarding? No, but I would like to if I wanted to. I was like, that's exactly how I feel. I'm like, I don't necessarily want to go snowboarding down the hill on a sled again, but I don't want it to be like I can't because I'm so hurt. Like I want to be able to. Like I want it to be an option.
You got titanium bones, bro.
That's what I said. I'm
You
like, I'm
got-
reinforced now. I'll just do it again, and I'm like, ha.
Still it's bent.
It just bends. I gotta bend it back. I'm like,
He's walking
"Ugh."
around.
Just crooked, but not broken. Yeah, it's crappy.
I could just see you walking around. Boom, 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 boom.
It's just bent out. Just like we did to your truck bumper. I'm just beating it against a tree to straighten it back out.
You weren't beating it against a tree. I was, hey, tell me when it's straight.
Too far. Yeah.
Which happened because of another mutual friend, well, former friend.
Mm-hmm. The initial dent.
Oh, you don't remember?
We'll talk about
actually,
it. We'll talk about it off.
oh yeah,
It's a
because
boring-
that was a terrible night for both of us.
There were a lot of those, so I don't remember
well,
which one specifically.
This one shut down our friendship for about a year. Right after we became friends again, after another issue that shut it down for about a year.
We'll talk later.
Yeah,
We're
because
gonna
it's
wrap
gonna.
this up.
We're gonna be done for about a year. So
We're so far off topic.
now,
Now,
is that gun law didn't fucking shut it down for a year?
do
Nah.
you know how many people I know? Well, I know people, grown ass adults, which technically should include us, but I don't even consider our age grown ass adults anymore because people are so
30
childish.
this year, motherfucker.
Yeah, I know, and people still act like it's high school. But I know some adults who like have lost friendships over who voted for who. Like, are you serious at this point? Come on.
I just don't vote. Then nobody could be mad at me.
Or everyone can be mad at you, depending on how you look at it.
Well, you know that if I had voted, I'd have voted against your guy. But I didn't vote, so you can't be mad at me.
You know what? You changed my mind just now. I was like, no, you should always vote, you dick. And you're like, well, I would have voted this way. I'm like, it's probably better if you just don't. All right.
I'd have bumped him up one more decimal point on that freaking.
You know what's going to happen? This episode, like it's live, but it's going to end and people are going to like find it later. Cheryl's going to be like, oh, here's that episode I did. What the hell? That's like 2 hours longer than I was on there. And she's going to click and she's just going to find us talking about dented bumpers and pedophile lawyers. And she's like,
God.
she's like, what the hell
She's gonna
happened?
be like, well, that went off the rails. Oh, they cracked 3 more beers.
yeah.
Cheryl, we do appreciate you being on here.
Yeah, very much.
It was a great topic when you were on.
It was a serious conversation. It went to shit afterwards, but
yeah, we told you before we went live. This is what typically happens.
yeah. Well, this was a weird hybrid episode too, because I said, I'm like, we've done the live videos before when it was like Kyle Rittenhouse, and that wasn't technically like an unsuppressed episode. That was kind of just a cryptic live video.
Yeah.
This
And
one, I'm like,
this is a
we're making a-
live unsuppressed.
yeah, it's the first one we did, really. It's kind of fun.
Oh, fuck
Yeah.
yeah.
Do more of these.
Damn it. I said I wasn't going to do this shit.
I promised myself I wasn't going to cry.
By the way, remember that thing that I've been waiting on?
Mhm.
Next weekend,
Another one. All right.
another one.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's cool. Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. But yeah, we're gonna have more episodes soon. Probably not live. Maybe live. I don't know. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But
kind of was having, Keegan and, your dad. Oh, Megan. What did Megan say?
well, she said hey, because I was like, who's on here? And then we were talking. Well, first Keegan said I was lost on John's getaway hypothetical story. He said me too.
That's
So
all
it
right.
wasn't just me.
Hey, I've had too many of these.
We're good. Yeah, we'll be back soon. We're gonna crank out more. I'm broken. It really was hard for me to get even in here and seated and everything getting through. Not everyone can see on camera, but it's
see
tough.
the crutches. I see the
Yeah, it
desk.
was-
I'm like,
Yeah, it was fun.
Did he build it behind it? Or just this is where I live now.
Yeah, we'll be back. So yeah, and plus holidays and stuff. We had family time. We had a lot going on. Stuff we'll dive into in another episode. But thanks for those who stuck around. Thanks for watching later. Everyone who watched earlier when we were actually talking about stuff. So
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, go back to the first hour and 20 minutes. That's all that really
stop
matters.
there. When Cheryl
Just
leaves, just
stop
turn it off.
there. Just drop it at that point.
Save yourself the time. And unless you're drunk. No,
Yeah,
then
if you're
it'll-
drunk and you want to hear 2 drunken assholes arguing,
about gun laws. All right, guys. See you later.
have